Judgment. King. Multiverse was sitting on his throne with Ink and Error by his side as Abyss and his team were present in front of him asking questions and questioning his place along with other AUS. You claim yourself king? Yet no one gave you the authority. Abyss shouted. I gave it to myself, king. Multiverse said, resting his head on his hand. And what you? Abyss shouted towards Error, who looked his way. I never thought you to be a slave. Abyss said. Why dash? But Error was stopped by a hand by King. Multiverse, who looked to Abyss curiously. And who are you? To come to your new king in such a demanding voice. Unless. King. Multiverse said as suddenly Seraphim walked over towards them from behind the throne, completely ready to wipe Abyss and his team off the face of the multiverse. Unless you'd rather no longer live. That way you no longer have to be under my rule. King. Multiverse said, to which Abyss then hushed up, not saying another word. I've claimed your multiverse's mightiest fighters, and yet this place still resists me. You can see how I can't let that slide, right? So I suppose today I will cast judgment. King. Multiverse said with a cold tone. Hold on now. Abyss said, hesitating. I could kill you. Have your bones hung upon my throne, that way no way will question me again. Or better than that. How about I set your progress back to 0? Little worm. King. Multiverse said as he then used his reset power and reverted Abyss back into a regular Sans, much to the shock to the rest of his team. You bastard. Mecha. Sans shouted as the rest of the Abyss team held him back. What the hell did you do to me? Abyss shouted as he looked at himself in shock and horror. Judgment, King. Multiverse said as Abyss and his team then teleported away with King. Multiverse giving a small sigh of relief. God, those fools sure are annoying. Thanks, Error. You sure know how to look threatening. When you not talking, hee King. Multiverse chuckled. You know how to look like a fool. Error said, to which him and King. Multiverse said as Error looked at one another with annoyance covering their faces. Leave us, King. Multiverse said, to which Ink then nodded and left them. King. Multiverse then looked back at Error's face, which was now pissed and filled with anger. Just who the hell do you think you are? Error shouted, causing King. Multiverse to flinch a tad. Learn your place in the hierarchy of this world, filth. Know that the only reason I'm under you is due to 404's direct order. Don't ever forget that. Little worm, Error said as he teleported away. King. Multiverse then put his hands together to calm his nerves. Back at 404's headquarters, 404 and Bill were working through some things when Error showed up and punched the ground in anger. 404 looked back and then focused back at the task at hand. Eric, how could you entrust me to that fucking idiot? Error shouted as he stomped over to 404 and Bill. Hold on now, Blue. I think the boy wants words with you, he. Bill said as he disappeared. 404 then turned around with a calm and cold look as Error walked over, fuming. That fucking look. Why do you always stare at me like that? Like as if you don't understand me. Understand my anger. Error thought as he stopped in front of 404. Calm your nerves. I told you to prepare for this. You act like you've just been told your friend's mom ran over your dog. 404 said. Yeah, well that kinda happens when you're made into the biggest loser's bitch now, isn't it? You get to be back here and scheme all day while I'm stuck up there with that dash. Key to our plan, 404 said, finishing Error's mumbling. Your plan? I hardly feel like I'm involved anymore in these schemes anymore. Error said. Oh, poor Glitch, feeling lost and alone without his master's fingers around his neck. Nightmare said as he slithered from behind the bridge that hovered over the mainframe. Error looked over unamused. Hey, oh yes, thought you'd be rid of me so easily. While you've been away playing slave for that fool king, I've been out gathering research for our lord. Nightmare said as he came over and kneeled to 404, who looked down upon him. Teeth. Filthy creature. Error scoffed, folding his arms. What have you found, creature? 404 asked as he raised his hand, signaling for Nightmare to stand, which he did. Well, my lord. Word through the multiverse talks of a hero, a ghost. Nightmare said. A ghost? 404 said. Yes, the ghost of the multiverse. Said to go around saving AUS from horrible fates. He has even been rumored to be able to bring AUS back from the dead. Nightmare said. 404's eyes widened as did Error's at the utter words that came out of Nightmare's mouth. Error Nightmare. With me. Let us go and hunt down a ghost. 404 said. Sir, with all due respect. What if this creature's words are just babble and nothing more? Error said. You think I would risk my life and my rank among the true ruler of creation just to tell a fib? Surely you're more brilliant than that, Error, or could it be I've misjudged you? Nightmare snickered, to which Error was ready to yell at him before 404 turned to both of them. Enough. We're going. True or not, this is worth looking into. Now with me. 404 said, only for Bill to pop up in front of him. Oh great. 404 mumbled. Did you honestly think I'd let you go without your blanket? What if you cry? I want to be there to help you just in case. Bill smiled as 404 pushed past him. Out of the way things have gotten more interesting. 404 said, while far away in the Onona's horror tale a certain villainous figure was beginning to plan their next move. God of the multiverse. The evil voice snickered. First deployment. In the doodle sphere, a place beyond that of even the multiverse. Ink was hovering above the gateways to AOS as he thought to himself. Where did you come from? Ink said as he then looked at all the Ink, then thought of all the talk about first AUS and nonsense like that. He knew Underfell or Underswap had to have been first, but then thought about all the times when AUS had went missing in the past. What are you thinking about? Alpha said, appearing next to Ink, suddenly scaring him. Jesus! You nearly scared my funny bone right off. Ink chuckled as Alpha floated next to him. So what you here for? Another fight with the evil bad guy? That Anon guy we fought before was pretty crazy, or will it be against D+ again? I really want to beat that guy. He won unfairly last time. Ink said, pumped for whatever could. You lost that fight due to your impatience and arrogance. You could win more battles if you just focused. Stopped with the emotions you value so much. Alpha said. Oh. Anyway, I've been listening to the Abyss team again. Alpha said. Master, I told all they say is nothing but rambling. They're simply chasing after Dash. A ghost, Alpha said. Oh. You've seen him and so have I. 404 isn't simply a legend anymore, that foe is real. Going around ruining these perfect universes with his changes and destructive motives. Alpha said. Not only that, but he's corrupted your rival Error. Alpha said as he then grabbed the O known as Underswap. I'm sure Error has his reasons, but that doesn't mean I can just let him do whatever he wants. I need to keep getting better. Ink said as Alpha looked back at him, smiling. Good. Then let's get back to training. Alpha said as he teleported him and Ink to a desolate O. Well, what O is this? It's completely empty, Ink said, looking around. I cleared it out a few hours ago. Alpha said. What, why? What did you do to the inhabitant Dash? But before Ink could finish, Alpha shot a homing blaster at Ink, sending him flying before skidding a few feet. He coiled in pain. There it is again, your emotions are getting the better of you, Ink. How will you face 404 with such an obvious weakness? You need to be better. Alpha said as he flew towards Ink, who looked up and dodged Alpha's attack. Good, keep that up. Alpha said as he continued to fight with Ink, who did his best to block and defend. Alpha went for kicks and punches with Ink defending with his broom arms. Ink then punched Alpha only for it to go through his head. Alpha then grabbed Ink's arm and twisted it before throwing him to the side. Eric! Darn it! Ink said as he got up. Guess I lose this one, Ink chucked as Alpha looked at him, unsure on how to respond. You need to learn to react faster, pace yourself, and most importantly just focus. Alpha said as Ink looked down. Alpha then sighed as he then took a knee to Ink. Hey, you wanna draw? Alpha asked, to which Ink's eyes lit up and then got his sketch pad and other art supplies. Alpha then sat down with him and began to draw alongside him. However, on the other side of the multiverse in Mecha. Tail Mecha. Sans and the rest of the Abyss team now with Code. Tail Gaster as an extra guest, they all stood in front of Mecha. For 04, who was suspended by large metal claws and having constant test run on him. Red and Blue Part 1. Flashback to a previous time. For 04 was sitting down in the Omega timeline resting after a long mission. It's strange, 404 thought to himself as he saw discarded O inhabitants and others walking about. When I first discovered this place, I thought it would be a good chance to get free code. A bunch of trash lying around and doing nothing but wasting space. These guys have no home, no family, and no one to go back to. Perhaps that's when I realized it. 404 thought to himself as the other inhabitants walk by him and wave to him, greet him and smile at him. He looked around at all the stray gasters, Peruses, Frisks, Toriels, and ECT. They were just like me, living an existence no longer nowhere close to home. No longer within the comfort of the snow of Snowdin or the beautiful heat of Hotland. They were somehow finding meaning in this nothingness where I couldn't. Home. I hadn't thought of it in so long. It began to become a taboo to think of. I remember a time when I couldn't go 10 minutes without thinking about it, otherwise my code would fizzle, and I'd turn into a glitchy mess. Now, I'm hollow melancholic. I don't even remember what it used to be like anymore. Did I even want it back now? After all these years. That damn fool. He talks so loud and can be so annoying. He speaks to me like he knows so much, like a child who believes he's ready to face the world. He's like a son to me though. I don't think I could survive in this world if he wasn't in it anymore. 404 thought to himself as a few other inhabitants walked over to him. Hey William, are you okay? Yeah, you look sad. Anything we can do? They said. Core, they're the only other one to know my name, and despite me telling them not to tell others, they did anyway. 404 thought to himself. I'm okay, just thinking. 404 said with a weak smile as the three of them left him alone. Now everyone walks around calls me by my actual name instead of the other one I asked them to call me by. I feel like I'm back home when they say that to me. Acknowledging the person I was before instead of the one I am now.
Doi hate William.
404 thought to himself as he looked at his own shadow. He stared at it for a few moments. He couldn't save anyone, made selfish decisions, and couldn't hold on to the happiness he tried to bring to everyone. Well, almost everyone. I wonder sometimes if my urge to do whatever I want stems from my weakness as William or my power as 404. If from neither, then who? Is there another demon I haven't faced yet? I hate being this way. 404 thought to himself as Core then arrived over to him. Oh God, you're still here. I was hoping to catch you before you go. I have a small favor to ask you. Hey, you depressed or something? What's with the long face? Core asked 404, then looked to Core confused before going back into thought. Core thinks I'm depressed. I call depression a hoax. It's a place for people who can't find meaning in their lives to go to retreat to. Sometimes people build garbage to replace this emptiness. Those people are dead, for they have no lives. I am not depressed. I simply just see my existence for what it currently is, and find it hollow. 404 thought to himself before looking back to Core. No, I'm fine, just thinking is all. You know I don't like doing these stupid favors. Who's it for and why? 404 said as he stood up. Core then turned around and introduced Player. 404 stared at them. They seemed quite feminine. It was a long while since 404 saw someone like them. However, something drew him closer. Player's red eyes were almost mesmerizing, though nothing like Chara's perfectly shaped pink ones. However, these had a glow to them that 404 couldn't look away from. This is Player. He needs help getting his ode to its. What was it again? Core asked. Oh, well, you see, I'm a bit of a dirty hacker, Player chuckled. Like I haven't heard that one before. 404 said, scratching his head. Yeah, well, I wanted to get my world a perfect ending. One that involves everyone reaching the surface. Player said. So like.
No.
404 looked back to Player, his attention now fully grabbed. I want to go beyond that. I want my friends to live in a world beyond what that stupid game allows for us. You see, every time I reach or complete it, it stops everything and tells me a job well done. However, I don't feel like I've accomplished anything when the next time I boot up everything, everyone is right back to where they belong. Back in the underground. Player said, frustrated as he grabbed at his coat. I'm tired of there being an end to everything. I want their happiness to be eternal. I want them to live beyond what the game allows for me to do. Player shouted. Core and 404 looked at one another before Core then completely faced towards Player. It sounds like you want a universe where there is no end to Undertale. Core said. That's exactly it, but I don't want to make another one, I just want to extend my own. I looked everywhere for power coders who could help me, But they couldn't get the job done. They weren't strong enough. So when I found this place in core I had to ask. That's when they mentioned you, William. Player said, to which 404 looked annoyed at core, who tried to shush player. Hey, I know I told you his name. But he really likes 404, okay? Core said, trying not to get yelled at by 404. Oh sorry, 404 I mean. Player said. 404 signed as he then scratched his head some more. So what do you think? Sounds like something right up your alley, 404. You're a great coder and hacker, you've shown me before. Core said. Look Core, I'm not a teacher, much less a miracle worked. You can't keep sending people my way when their AUS go bust, okay? Sometimes creators no longer find interest in their stories, so they just stop working on them. Either out of laziness or a lack of motivation. I honestly don't know why someone would start a project then never finish it. Seems like a waste of time to me. 404 said. Come on, we'll give him a hand, besides what are you doing right now that's so important? Just looks like to me you're sitting around depressed. Core said, pouting. I'm not depressed. Just thinking is all. 404 said as he turned from them. So you'll do it? Player asked. No chance in hell. Like I'd waste my time helping someone trying to achieve a hopeless dream. 404 said. Will dash. Hopeless. Player shouted, getting 404 in core to look at him. Look here, Blue Man, I didn't step away from my home and come begging to you so you could call everything I said hopeless. I came here 'cause you're supposed to be the best. If you're not that, you're wasting my time and I'll just go find someone else. Player said, frustrated. Hey now, let's just calm do dash. Not the best? Just who do you think you are? I could flip this entire omniverse on its head and not break a sweat, and you're calling me weak? Where the hell do you get the never, you big red pimple? 404 growled. Then prove it then, shouldn't be a problem for the best, right? Player replied. 404 looked at them and then to Core, who was in the middle of them. Come on guys, Core said. Fine then, I'll help you. 404 said. Wait, really? Core said, confused. Yeah, under one condition. 404 said. And what is that? Player asked. When I do this you have to call me the god of the multiverse, understand? 404 demanded, to which player nodded his head. Core then waved to them as the two then teleported away. Machine vs. Monster. Mecha 404 eventually would land in the known as Horror Tale. Mecha 404 walked and looked for signs of infected. He used his scanners to search the place, in which it found traces of infected's power still remaining. Hey buddy, said a voice behind Mecha 404. Don't you know how to greet a new? Well, wait a second. Just what the hell are you? Asked the voice as Mecha 404 turned to see it was Horror. Sans. Mecha 404 then scanned Horror. Sans, who freaked at the weird light being shined on him. Sans number 48890 alias Horror. Magic capabilities, dismal. Mecha 404 said as it then turned around and began to walk into the woods, leaving Horror confused. Mecha 404 walked through the woods of Horror Tale, and as he did he saw claw marks and writings on trees. The deeper he went until he finally ended up at a tree that had been written on so much that it hardly seemed like a tree, and more like an artistic disaster. No size of subject infected. Recalibrating approach. Mecha 404 said. However, the very next moment an axe went flying by his head before he caught it. Mecha 404 looked at the axe, and then looked in the direction of which is thrown, only to see infected leaning against a tree. Well, look what the Asian cat dragged in. A giant pile of tint and bolts. Infected snickered. Subject infected found, proceeding capture protocol. Mecha 404 said as it then flew at infected at light speed, to which infected casually dodges. Whoops. Infected said as Mecha 404 stopped on a dime and flew back to infected, only for him to dodge him again. Infected began to laugh hysterically, only for Mecha 404 to stop again and turn his head. Increasing speed. Mecha 404 said as he was bounds faster than before and blitzed straight at infected, so fast infected saw Mecha 404 as a blur. Oh. Infected said as he was tackled and then thrown into a tree. Infected then sent a horde of wisp at Mecha 404, who turned his arms into cannons and shot every single one of them, causing massive explosions in the woods. Infected swatted away the smoke only for Mecha 404 to punch Infected's clean off his shoulders. Mecha 404 watched it fall. He-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. Oh shit is getting good now. Infected shouted with joy as then his body exploded sending Mecha 404 flying backwards. He would then stop himself as he watched the wisp fuse together with Infected's remaining bits to completely reform him back to normal. Speechless, huh? Good shit I know. This stuff really does the trick. My black blood works wonders again dash. However Infected would get cut off as Mecha 404 punched him in the face. Ard. Dickhead. Haven't you ever seen anime? You're supposed to let me finish talking and then dash. But Mecha 404 continued to beat down on Infected, not giving him an edge. Infected then tried to battle back, but every punch he threw Mecha 404 dodged it, and then dished out his own. Mecha 404 then uppercut Infected before grabbing his head and smashing it into the ground. Infected dodged a stomp attack from Mecha 404 before getting himself up only to be punched to the ground again by Mecha 404. Infected jumped up and wrapped his legs around Mecha 404's head as he then began to punch it. Mecha 404 stood up tall and turned its arms into machine gun-like turrets and fired them at Infected's head, turning it into Swiss cheese. Infected then went limp as Mecha 404 then grabbed both sides of his waist and pushed him off. Your efforts for victory are slim. Your actions are irrelevant. I have been given your battle data, your combative skills and your many fighting styles. There is nothing you can do to surprise me. Mecha 404 said as he then stepped on Infected's chest. Infected groaned as he weakly grabbed at Mecha 404's leg. Why you aren't going to beat me while monologuing? Infected groaned. Asset taken down, returning back to HQ. Mecha 404 said as he then stomped on Infected's face, knocking him out. On the other side of the multiverse 404, and his crew landed inside of a dead-o. Is this it? Where is everyone? Error asked. 404 took a knee down and grabbed the core code of the AU, to which he then pulled apart to look at the inner workings of this universe. He then was able to read who was and hasn't been here, and also see everything about them. What have you found, my lord? Nightmare said as he slithered over to 404, who continued to stare at the information he had found. 404 watched as he saw in a playback of time only for his eyes. He saw ink and an unknown individual. 404's eyes looked harder as he saw the individual and their characteristics. Why can't I read you? 404 whispered. What? Nightmare asked. I can't read the code of the person in this moment of time. That should be impossible. Either that or I haven't studied their code before. I'll need to look further into this. I need to go deeper into this and study the deepest parts of this multiverse. Having individuals who have code and aren't coded not within my palm can't be allowed. 404 said as he then created new clothes for himself, and then proceeded to walk away. My lord, where are you going? Nightmare said as Error also walked over, curious. 404 then looked as Error walked past, and then looked down a hill. 404 then looked as Error walked past, and then looked down a hill. Oops. This image does not follow our content guidelines. To continue publishing, please remove it or upload a different image. I need to go for a bit, while I would like to revive my home. I can't do that if the possibility of a Rouge force existing and going against me is present. See you guys around. 404 said before he then shrank the entire dead universe into the size of a small ball and crushed it into pieces. 404 then teleported back to HQ and then looked down into the mainframe pool. He then jumped into it. He looked around as the mainframe reacted to him extremely until it calmed down as Loading's face appeared. Now what would someone like you want? Loading asked. I'm here to understand why and how there are beings still here I can't comprehend. I just discovered a sans with code I can't read. Why is that? 404 asked as Loading's eye looked at him from all around. Why should I assist you? I'm plotting on killing you as we speak. Yet you've done me the pleasure of coming right to me. Within this pool vacant of dimensions and feeble concepts you're nothing. How shall I destroy you, I wonder? Loading said. How about we settle it with a fight? I win and you teach me to see all types of code within the multiverse. 404 said. And what do I get when I win? Loading asked as multiple different faces popped up all around 404. You get me, you get to finish your job and no longer worry about some nobody treating the mainframe's power like a toy. 404 said as loadings. I then looked deeper into who 404 truly is, and sensed he was telling the truth. Alright William. You have a deal. However, how would a creature such as yourself fare against me? Me a being beyond everything that makes this multiverse what it is. Me a being that even now has a form and shape so far beyond you that you would find yourself dumbfounded by my cosmic otherness. You want to fight me? Loading said as 404 then summoned forth his just 404 transformation by mistake, trying to turn into his butterfly one. Yes, J404 said with a smile. He. How in the multiverse do you plan to touch, much less harm, a multidimensional being like myself who doesn't need a physical body or anything to attack you? Hell, I'm not even on your plane of existence, William. How will you win here? Loading chuckled as he asked. Guess we'll find out, but I'm not going back empty-handed, J404 said. Red and Blue Part 2. Flashback to a previous time. In the known as Underplayer, everything seemed fine, but there was something terribly wrong with it. It had many problems, bugs, cracked code, and unrefined character placements. It was due to the results of player attempting to access a thing beyond the ending of the game. Player restarted the world once again as they attempted to do it once again. Come on. Come on. Player said as the entire universe began to glitch and fracture into pieces until they stomped, exhausted from the effort. Player floated disappointed in their efforts. Wow, you did pretty good. Maybe when you're done you might delete yourself, 404 said as he was floating behind her steaming sarcasm. Player turned around unamused. You're supposed to be helping me. Core said dash. Core is a child and an optimist. They has no idea what the real world is like. Look, it's clear that this had an endpoint. Why in the hell are you trying to extend past it? 404 asked annoyed. I want to give everyone a happy ending. Ever since I played Undertale for the first time, I've dreamed of what lies beyond the credits and what life for everyone is like after. Player said, looking at the barrier. 404 stared at it too. Not all stories need more to be a story. The best part of every story is the ending. 404 said as he crossed his arms. Hey, wow, that was almost poetic. Maybe in another week you'll sing me a song. Player giggled. For a short moment 404 was reminded of Chara, his adorable smile and sweet laughter. 404 then groaned as he destroyed the barrier. What are you doing? Player asked. Testing something. Close your eyes. 404 said. Player closed his eyes and began to hear the sound of code being shifted and moved around. Data being used and deleted until. Okay, open them. 404 said. When player did, they saw a whole wide world beyond the barrier, and beyond the credits of the world had been created. Whoa. But my friends, will they be able to dash? Don't worry. All I really did was make your universe bigger. It's a simple process really. I could teach you if you want. 404 said, stuttering a bit while still trying to sound like himself. Player then ran to him and hugged 404. 404 didn't know how to react, and just stood there. Thank you, William. Player smiled, his rosy lips and cheeks full of color and life. 404's face turned a bright red as he looked away and then removed himself from the hug. Look, that's enough physical contact. 404 said. Oh sorry, I guess you are an error. I know you guys don't like being touched. Player said. No, it's not that. 404 said. Then what is it? Player said, tilting his head. It's a. 404 looked down to player, whose hair was shining in the light of the surface. Another reminder of Chara. I'm betraying myself. 404 said as he sat on the ground. Player back up as he looked at 404, put his head in hands. Are you okay? Player said. 404's eyes opened wide. Remembered where he was. He then stood up straight and walked away. Player watched curious before then leaving to explore the new world 404 had made. 404 walked past hundreds of faces he knew. Metaton, Muffet, Undine and many others. He walked all the way to Hotland. He then looked over and saw the laboratory. He could feel his memories flooding in around him. Hallucinations of his child self running around Hotland with Adam, Ares and Jacob clouded his mind. He could see them and yet he couldn't interact with the past. The festival. Back inside the Deado, Error and Nightmare continued to search around looking for any clues they could find. Ugh. This is hopeless. Nothing here is getting us closer towards finding this stupid ghost. Error said. Maybe if you look dash.
No.
Listen, Octopus. I've had it with your damn deceiving ways. All you've done is distract 404 from his goal, and I refuse to waste my time chasing stories. I'm done. Error said as he then began to walk away when then they heard a large thundering noise. Error and Nightmare looked around in the sky as they saw the clouds begin to thunder and churn in a typhoon-like form. What is it? Nightmare asked. Quiet, Error said as he then got his strings out. Error then looked back as he saw a small blue light in the distance. What the hell is that? Error said as he squinted his eyes. Nightmare followed Error's eyes and looked at it too. They looked as they saw it then make a direct beeline right towards them at unimaginable speeds. Nightmare then protected himself with his tentacles while Error used his blaster as a shield only for the strange object to burst right through it and send Error flying through the woods behind him. He would slam the back of his head against a tree and then fall over. Nightmare uncovered himself and then saw it. It was large metal version of 404. Mecha. 404 stood tall and put his rockets back within his legs. He then turned to Nightmare. Nightmare got his tentacles ready. Who sent you, metal monstrosity? Nightmare shouted. Subject name. Sans number 490. Alias Nightmare. Capture confirmed. Mecha. 404 said as it then walked towards Nightmare, who then attacked Mecha. 404 with his tentacles only for it to have no effect and for Mecha. 404 to grab Nightmare by the neck and lifting him up. He then shocked Nightmare with 9000000000000 quintillion kilowatt-hour of electricity, knocking out Nightmare instantly. Error burst out of the woods only to briefly see Nightmare being lifted away and taken. What the hell? Error said as he then looked one more time before teleporting away. In the Void King. Multiverse had hired everyone from the O Construction Tale who were building some festival props and along with large floats that looked like King. Multiverse. Nice, these look really good. King said to Construction. Ascari, who had blueprints in his hand and a pencil on his ear. Thank you, we're glad to serve and help you. See. Ascari said, bowing and then going back to working. Error then teleported into the anti-void, stumbling. King turned around and saw Error. He didn't pay much mind though and then went to sit back down on his throne. Where is he? Error asked when he then noticed the floats. What the fuck are these? Error asked. Oh, didn't you know? I'm setting up a nice little parade for myself. King said. What? Error said, shocked. Yeah, for my celebration of my rule over the multiverse. I can make you a float too if you want. King said as Error pinched his nose in frustration. Listen, I don't give a shit about your little. You know what, forget, I'll find him myself. Error said as he then teleported away again. King shrugged as he leaned back in his seats. That's when Codetail, Gaster and the rest of the Abyss team arrived. The rest stayed back as Code. Gaster walked up and kneeled to King. Mutiverse. Codetail's representative enters my court. What is it you want? King asked. My lord, the multiverse has a problem. Code Gaster said. The Beatdown Part 1. An HQ Error was looking around for 404. He even began to use his own scanner to track where he had been only to then turn around and see 404 hop out of the mainframe. He was severely battered and bruised. Sir. Damn, you look like shit. What happened? Error asked. Loading happened. What's going on? 404 asked as he regenerated his arm and his ribs and took off his jacket. Error need to take a minute to look at 404. He was everything he thought he was before they met. Strong, independent, charismatic, and yet also colder than space itself. Yet he was none of those things now. But if 404 has taught him anything, it's that anyone can improve. He then shook his head and focused again. Sir, there's a metal version of you. A robot, 404. Error said. Oh, I'm flattered. 404 said. Sir, this is serious. It kidnapped Nightmare. Error said. 404 then looked back with a confused look with Error, then also thinking about what he just said. Okay, maybe that's not important, but that robotic version of yourself is. I could sense your own power coming from it. No doubt this has something to do with the Abyss team. Error said as 404 then recreated his old Diggs, navy blue design. He cracked his knuckles and then turned around to Error. Yeah, I can feel it. It's like there's another me flying around. This is interesting. Kinda reminds me of my fight with Ares way back when. Still bizarre to think about. This really sucks though, if only I could be that strong on my own. 404 said, scratching his skull. You aren't alone. Error said. 404 and Error looked at each other. They both soon wore determined faces, with 404's having a hint of admiration. Error had come so far. He was everything 404 wished he was before. Error had shown true promise. Somewhere deep inside his soul he even felt like a proud father to Error. Thanks G, I don't think I could have managed this far without you. 404 said. Error looked at him almost surprised before cracking a smile. Yeah, well, I know that. Error smirked as he secretly was feeling an emotion greater than joy. Alright then, let's go out and dash. However, before 404 could finish, a giant blue question appeared above them, so big it made the two look like ants. What the hell is that? Error shouted. I'm not sure. 404 said as then a group of people came falling down out of the mysterious question's mark. It was D plus another. Sans Supreme. Sans and even Code. Gaster, who would all land a few feet away from 404, and Error, who were now on guard more than ever. Who the hell are you? Error shouted when he then met eyes with D plus, who he knew very well. Supreme stood up and stretched a bit before doing a flip and finally landing on his feet. Before doing another backflip. Alright. Enough fucking flips. D plus said, to which Supreme just shrugged. I'm guessing you're here for me? 404 asked. You're smarter than you look, which I mean with the outfit like must be hard. D plus said. I'm not talking to you, banana brains. I'm talking to your obvious boss. 404 said. Supreme then burst into laughter until D plus looked at him, to which he stopped and just smiled. That would indeed be me. You already know why I'm here. Your reign over the multiverse ends this day. Now you have two options, one is dash. Shut up. Error shouted. Not really one of the options, but okay. Code Gaster said. You have only one option, and that's dying. Error shouted. The beatdown part 2. Back at 404's HQ. Another Sans looked through the portal to the others had traveled to with 404. Is that where they're at? Said a voice. Once another Sans looked up, head see Tint with an unconcise Error on his shoulder. Tint then threw him through the question mark they call him in from. Code. Gaster was looking at the mainframe pool in the HQ. Fascinating, this thing is pure code, pure math. I've never seen anything like this, and yet it doesn't feel like all of it. Codegaster. I'd keep away from that, said another Sans, getting Codegaster's attention. There are something which should be left alone. Another Sans said as he then looked down and could hear fighting and the sounds of blasters going off. They're sure taking their sweet time. Tint said as he got his brush out. Yes, but we'll be ending it. Let's go, guess it's time. Another Sans said as he and Tint got ready to jump into the portal. Back inside it, D plus threw multiple punches at 404, which he parried and then kicked a bone out of the ground, pinning D plus against the wall. However, D plus then headbutt the bone, cracking it and then punching through it. Mecha. 404 got up slowly, his hardware creaking and metal aching. It looked at 404 and then fired hand rockets, which sent 404 flying into the next building to the left of the bar. A hotel. 404 teleported out of their grip and landed on the reception desk, only for Supreme to come bursting through the window of the building and fire his blaster at 404, who simply jumped up through the ceiling and landed in one of the hotel room. Son of Dash Supreme would then be interrupted as D plus came barging in from the front door. He then looked over and saw a little table where some liquor had been placed. He then sat down and drank it. You getting tired already? Supreme said, exhausted. No, just taking a quick break. Can never refuse a good drink. D plus said. Supreme nodded when Mecha 404 would come walking through the hole in the wall. As it did, D plus would throw his glass at its head, which didn't faze Mecha 404 a single bit. D plus then got up and then started punching the wall and hitting his chest. The hell you doing? Supreme asked. Getting my adrenaline going. Helps with getting past the pain. He hits hard. D+ said as he then looked up through the hole in the ceiling. Mecha. 404 walked over and got ready to jump up before D+ then put his hand up signaling to wait. D+ then listened closely. He could hear the hum of blasters above. 404 was waiting for them with nearly hundreds of small blaster and bones blocking the doors and windows. He was ready for them. D+ then grabbed Mecha 404 and threw him up into the hole where he got absolutely blasted. D+ and Supreme watched as massive waves of energy and smoke came flying out with Mecha 404 getting flung out of the hotel and landing headfirst into the snow. 404 looked out of the hole in the front of the hotel room where Mecha 404 got flung only for D+ to jump into it and sock him dead in the face, knocking him against a wall. Supreme would jump through the hole in the floor and fling furniture at 404, pining him to the wall harder. D+ and Supreme then fired their blasters and sent 404 flying out of the hotel and onto the roof of the bar next door. 404 spit out another tooth and would wipe his nose of blood. He then turned around to see a bone nearly miss his head. He then jumped to his feet and D+ and Supreme jumped onto the roof and charged at 404. D+ throwing multiple punches and swings at 404's body and head. 404 parrying and dodging the attacks. Supreme then slid under the legs of both of them and would double tap 404 against the back of the head, with 404 delivering a mean elbow to Supreme's chest, causing him to fall backwards. D+ then wound up his next attack and 404 would do the same, and before they both went for the attack 404 would get splashed with paint, blinding him. Son of bitch! 404 shouted as he wiped his eyes. D+ looked back to see another Sans and Tint had finally arrived. Looks like things got a bit out of control. Glad we made it. Another Sans said. I had it under control. D+ said. Sure you did. Tint said. 404 then got the paint of his face and looked at another Sans and Tint. He then scanned their code. He saw another didn't have any code whatsoever and Tint shared some Alphatail code. Wait a second. 404 said. We take of this now, let's keep it quick and simple. I'll go ahead. Another Sans said as he walked forward. D+ went to go ahead by Tint stopped him with his brush blocking the way. Oh, so they brought another one. Man, I'm starting to think you all can't handle me after all. To get bragging out of the way, I have a few questions. 404 said. We can answer those after your surrender. Another Sans said. Not happening. 404 said. Pity, I find fighting to be such a drag. Pointless physical strain and mental frustration. Lucky I don't have these limitations. In fact, limitations themselves is something flimsy to me. Another Sans said as 404 then fired a god ray at another, which had no effect. 404 looked confused, as did D+, who was shocked. Another Sans looked at the smoke coming from the impact it made on his shirt and then looked at 404. 404 then fired his blaster at another Sans, which sent D+ and Tint flying backwards. But another Sans once again wasn't affected. What? How? 404 thought to himself as he looked at his hands. If that's all your steam gone, then I'll go ahead and finish this. Another Sans said as he put his hand out, and suddenly 404 felt nauseous and fell to the ground unconscious. D+ got back onto the roof and looked at the scene. Whoa, how'd you do that? D+ said as he went over to 404 and touched him, only to get shocked by some weird eldritch effect. I simply neutralized all motor functions in his body. I also did the service of stopping whatever flow of mainframe energy he has stored in his body. However, something else deep within was fighting against me. Odd. Another Sans said as he put his arms to his side. Well, doesn't matter, the doc's little toy was a absolute dud. Cheap metal. D+ said as he spit out some blood. Another Sans looked at him and then to 404. Come on, let's regroup and head back. Another Sans said as he jumped off the roof. D+ watched him and then grabbed 404, dragging him back with him. The idea of null code. Gaster would walk back and forth across 404's HQ, as he did Mecha. 404 would then return damaged, yet still functional. Your back report. Code. Gaster said as he then grabbed a vial from his coat pocket and looked at the mainframe pool. Capture of the subject has gone successful. Mecha. 404 responded with sparks flying out of his head. Good, but where are Dash? However, there has been interference. Mecca. 404 said, as back within the OD plus would take a few steps back with 404 still in hand and another, Sans looking back at who had arrived. The angel of the multiverse another, Sans said as he looked at Alpha, who had arrived with ink as well. The hell you doing here? D plus asked. Alpha looked at them all with disgust and venom as his eyes narrowed. Hand over that killer and I'll let you all go free, Alpha said. YY- but D plus was stopped by another Sans as he turned fully around. We were tasked with bringing him in. King's orders. Another Sans said. What king? You mean that foolish oaf who sits on that throne of lies? Don't be silly. I know what you're from. Your kind aren't known to involve themselves in such trivial matters. Hand him over to me. I've been meaning to track down this killer. Seems you've done my job for me, Alpha said. If you think for a second we're about to dash, however, at that moment Alpha then with a wave of his hand transported D plus to his hell dimension instantly. 404 would drop to the ground. Supreme struggled to get up. Ink looked back at him. What of you? Alpha asked another. Sans looked down and then Alpha. He then kicked 404 towards him and walked past him grabbing Supreme by his collar. I'm hoping I won't see him again, another Sans said as he teleported away. Alpha looked down and grabbed 404 by his neck. You and me have a lot to talk about, Alpha said before vanishing with 404 in ink. Back at 404's HQ code. Gaster filled his vial with mainframe code, he tapped it and then put it in his pocket. He then looked over as another Sans returned with Supreme. I'm going to guess the interference was too much? Code, Gaster said. Another Sans simply threw Supreme to the ground and looked at the mainframe pool. I'm not interested in this coup of yours any longer, another Sans said. Very well, I believe I have found another solution. Code, Gaster said as he patted his pocket and another Sans teleported away. Mecha. 404 then looked at Code. Gaster. All means of apprehending subject error 404 have dropped to 0%. Mecha. 404 said. That's okay. Progress takes time. We will return to the lab and rethink our approach. With this new idea I believe we can kill two birds with one stone. Code, Gaster said as he and Mecha. 404 flew through the large question mark and with it vanished as well. Once back at Abyss Tail in the laboratory, Mecha. 404 was taken to the back for repairs while Abyss walked with Code, Gaster towards the labs. But 404 was supposed to be our catch. He was what all of this was leading up towards. Abyss said. Perhaps, but a new goal has been made. If the AUS are to survive, then they will need to be kept away from the chaos these Alpha invaders have sought to bring. I now see that they are impossible to beat. Code, Gaster said as they then eventually reached his study where multiple notes of Alphatail code, talk of the mainframe and a sketch of something called the Null Void was drawn on a whiteboard. Burning dust. In the Alpha's hell dimension, D plus fell down into a large pit and as he did, he looked around at his surroundings. He then began to see the souls of his victims floating and flying around him. His eyes looked at them. Your foe. Do you ever stop killing? When will it be enough? Just come back home already. The voices scram at D plus as he descended what felt like a never-ending pit until eventually, he did reach the bottom. He landed on snowy ground. D plus looked around and then noticed he was missing his yellow sweater. Oh come on now, how you going to send me to hell and yet without my whole set? D plus said as he then took a step and realized that it wasn't snow he was stepping in. It was dust. D plus said as he picked up a handful of it before shaking it out of his hand. He saw in front of him it was the gateway to the ruins. He was back in the underground. He walked over towards the ruins and put a hand on the door. Tor. D plus said as he closed his eyes and put both hands on the door. That's when a bone would go whizzing past his head. His eyes shot open as he turned around to find none other than his counterparts. Dust Trust, Hyperdust and even Swap, Dust. All of them pissed off and with that, D plus S mug went into that of a smile. Welcome to hell dickbag. Hope you're ready for your just deserves, shouted Dust Trust as he readied his weapons. D plus looked at him and smirked. And just what are you going to do with those sticks?
Des plus chocoldes.
Stop sounding so proudful. You're still just another version of us. You just got lucky, shouted Swap. Dust. Is that right? Guess there's only one way for you to find that out then. D+ said as he cracked his knuckles. Let's dash. Jump his ass. Shouted Hyper. Dust as he fired a large blaster at D+ only for him to deflect it with his bare hands, smashing it out of the way and into the air. He then rolled forward and grabbed a rock and threw it at Hyper. Dust at speeds faster than light. Oh sure dash Hyper. Dust then was killed instantly with the rock as it went flying straight through his head. D+ then saw as his body began to reform. Regeneration? Oh right, they're already dead. Fuck that. D+ then blitzed faster than he threw the rock and kicked Dust out of the way and kicked up a large dust cloud and swap. Dust's face. He then grabbed Hyperdust by the face and looked at him. You say I'm like that? I'm just another Dusto like y'all. D+ said as he then lifted him up and focused his DT through his hands and then double killed Hyperdust, completely wiping him from the face of the multiverse's hell. But if that's true, then why the fuck y'all dying so much? D+ said as he threw the husk of Hyperdust's body to the ground where it decayed and was vaporized. Swap. Dust then appeared behind D+ ready to attack. Slow as a Moda dash however swap. Dust looked in shock to see D+ facing him. He then coughed up blood as he looked down to see D+ had already punched through him. You were saying? D+ said as he then double killed Swap. Dust vaporizing him from hell. He then looked to Dust who was shaking. He dropped his blades and fell to his knees as D+ walked over to him and put his foot on his head. You rotten, how can you strike us down? We're you for crying out loud. Dust shouted in anger. D+ looked at him with a disgusted look. Piece of shit, you wish you were me. I'm looking to purge all you assholes. I know the full effect of what our actions inflict on the multiverse. Dust AUS are a cancer, all they do is pollute this multiverse with more garbage. I look to get rid of that, that's what the DT showed, unlike the rest of you scumfucks. All you do is kill, kill and kill more. D+ said. What's make it different when you do it? Dust shouted before D+ then stomped on his head, crushing it. I do this shit with a purpose, and that's killing you. D+ said as he double killed Dust. He then sensed a few other presences near him. He looked over to see hundreds of other Dusts all flocked around him. Is this what we doing now? Is the only way you can even get one hit in is to jump me? Pathetic hoodied fucks. Alright then, if you can land at least one hit on me, then I'll let you kill me. D+ said as he then looked up and saw his hood slowly falling down. Everyone looked at him. Each Dust got themselves ready to take him out. However, some of them were shaking. This motherfucker wiped me out before I could see him coming, said Dust's belief as his hands were shaking. He's just one piss hoodie wearing freak. He shouted Super. Dust Seraphim. Dust stepped out of the woods and towered over him. D+ extended his arm up into the air and grabbed his hood, putting it on. It's called gold. Blind ass nigga. D+ said, smirking. Kill his ass, shouted Hyper. Hyper. Dust as they rushed onto D+. He jumped into the air above them all. Seraphim. Dust flew in to grab at him only for D+ to smile. Looks like you missed your shot, D+ said as he then activated his DT burst. An attack that immediately went off and vaporized everyone and everything within a large mile radius. He watched as all of their souls came falling down. Scorched trash, doesn't matter how much trash you bring to face. They're all still trash. D+ said as he then used his red mastery and smashed all the souls into a single line before then sending a sharp bone through them all, skewering them. Now stay dead. Or double dead now, D+ said as he smirked. He then heard clapping behind him and saw Dust sitting on a branch behind him. You want some too? D+ asked. And just how do you plan to fight your reflection, I wonder? Dust chuckled as he walked towards him. The two looked at each other before then seeing the dust around their feet begin to catch a blaze. What's going on now? D+ said as he looked around himself. It's starting. Thanks to the Dust AUS, the multiverse has begun to react. Now there's a new threat. A new Dust you'll soon have to overcome, D said as he fixed his scarf. I've already faced and killed many, D+ said. Oh, nothing like this. This one is going to make you start rethinking your path, my twin. Burning Dust won't be easy to bring down, D said. Please, I doubt that highly. D plus said before he then felt something stomp behind him. You sure about that? Said a demonic voice behind him. D plus was frozen on the fact he wasn't able to detect when this guy showed up. The dust killer, huh? Well, you have been able to wipe out those runts, but this isn't the kiddie pool anymore. Time to put that shit to the test, shouted Burning Dust. Burning determination. D plus backed away as Burning Dust looked down at him with his horrific eyes.
Un heure de sto.
D plus thought to himself. Wrong.
Amenons au point.
Shouted Burning Dust as he then summoned a large spiral attack and smashed it onto D plus, who barely dodged the attack. Haste fast. D plus said. If we were one again you could beat him without trouble. D said with a chuckled. D plus then fired a blast at D, who faded into red smoke. In your dreams. D plus said as he then dodged another attack from Burning Dust, who fired it out of his eyes. You think you're special, think you're different? All Dustios inevitably lead to the end, said Burning Dust. Dust plus looked at Burning Dust. You and every other Dusto to ever be all will lead into one ending. The extinction of the multiverse. Burning Dust said. What? D plus said as he looked at Burning Dust. Yes, not only that, but now something is coming soon. The resurgence of the demons of determination. Burning Dust said. Demons of determination? D plus said. Yes, they are. However, before Burning Dust could say anything, he got blasted away by large blasters from D plus. The shockwave shook the entire hell dimension. Burning Dust got up only to see D plus gone. Burning Dust wiped some dirt and snowy ash off of himself before he started looking around. You won't be able to hide forever. Wherever there is dust, there I also remain. Burning Dust said as he then sunk into the ash and began to move underneath it. D plus ran into the ruins and blasted the entrance, blocking it. He then took a quick breath before removing his hood from his head. He looked around for a moment, getting flashes to his own genocide run through them. Getting flashes to more fun times, huh? Said Dust, sitting on the patch of grass behind D plus. D plus ignored him and just kept thinking to himself. This weird dimension seems to embody hell itself in this multiverse. Like some weird metaphysical realm, so to speak. D said with a wide smile. D plus thought on that for a moment before then having strings nearly miss him. He turned around, blasted a few other strings and then caught on in his hand. He looked over into the darkness and saw glitches coming out from it. Great, now what? D plus said. You didn't actually believe you got all of them, did you? D said as he looked too to see Dust. Error come out from the shadows along with Dust. Inc. Well, if it isn't the pissed Dust that murdered us. I think a little revenge is in order. What do you think, Squid? Dust? Error asked as Dust. Inc. simply laughed. Pissed Dust? I know the Freako C isn't talking to me like as if he's some complex and well though of character. Dust plus said. Better than being you, what the hell are you supposed to be? What spin on Dust are you supposed to be? A depressed version of him? Or a edgy version? Dust? Error laughed, looking at Dust. Inc. They both laughed only for Dust. Inc. to get his head blasted off and his soul ripped out by D plus's red mastery. Dust? Error in shock fired his strings at D plus, who jumped over one and then swung on it to get close to Dust. Error. Stupid asshole. How you gonna dodge mid-air? Dust? Error shouted as he fired his blaster at D plus, only for D plus to deflect with his bare hands via a punch. He then landed in front of Dust. Error and sucker punched him in the air. He then grabbed his leg and slammed him to the ground. Buddy, you're just Dust, but you're glitchy and talk all funny. You're nothing special, just a cheap fucking knockoff. D plus said as he lifted his foot. And oh wait, however, D plus crushed Dust. Error's skull into pieces. He then used his red mastery and pulled the soul out of Dust. Error before crushing it, killing him for good. Also, to answer your question, not that you're alive to listen, but I'm the Dust that gives a fuck. D plus said as he then started walking towards Toriel's home. He eventually entered it and went to the living room to sit at the table. He had to think of some way to get rid of the burning Dust guy or get the hell out of. Well, hell. He then eventually ran out of the home. Well, look who's here, said a voice. D plus turned around to see none other than Killer Dajv standing there leaning against a wall. Hey, it's your old buddy, didn't he kick your ass? D said with a large smirk. No, he didn't. D plus said. I see you're still talking to yourself. What the hell you doing in? Well, hell. Killer.jpg asked. Trying to get out. How did you get in? D plus asked. I was sent in to collect DT samples. Seems like this section of hell is littered with DT. Almost infected with it. The DT here is insane, no dimensions to catch or even remotely comprehend. It's almost like it doesn't exist. Killer.jpg said as he got out his knife. DT doesn't include those things, pretty math shit ain't in it either. It's just DT at the end of the day. D plus said as he walked around Killer.jpg. Killer.jpg watched as D plus continued to walk past him. Where are you going, D? Planning on doing things solo as usual? Killer.jpg asked as he turned to D plus. D plus looked at the ground for a moment before answering. If your ass is here, then I reckon the entrance must be near the start of the ruins. Or at least a weak point to which I can exploit. D plus said as he kept walking. D plus walked through the ruins, each spot a reminder of what he had done in his own so long ago. The feeling of guilt slowly rising over him once again. It disappointed him as he had hoped he had thrown the past away. That his murdering of the other Dostoevs would prove to be some form of repentance for what he had done, no. Instead he was seemingly given ever more guilt. How cruel. How unfair. The ghost of a god. For 04 woke up immediately, he looked around and noticed he was being restrained by some weird black ink. He then began to look around as he saw that he was also on a chair and outside. The winds went flying through his jacket, and on his face as he looked to see trees to his left and a mountain to his right. 404 could sense the code of one individual. Now where is Dash? So, finally awake, huh? Said a familiar voice. 404 looked over to see Ink balancing on a tree. 404 watched Ink jump down and land leaning against one of the trees. This is dead, no one living in it. Besides you. 404 said. Well, there is you too, you know. I was always curious what Glitchy was doing while away. I was like, what better things could that loner possibly have to do? Then I started learning about you, about more than that too. Now I see why you asked of me. I can see why your Dash, however 404 wasn't paying attention at all. Instead, 404 was just looking around for the one who knocked him out before. Yet he didn't see him. I know there's something else here. 404 said, interrupting Ink. Ink looked around and smirked. There's no one else here. Are you delusional or something, old man? Hee. Ink chuckled. Don't joke with me, calamari. Otherwise I'll really show you what I've been teaching error. 404 said, to which Ink then stopped and backed up a bit in fear. 404's eyes were cold and focused, unwavering as he stared at Ink in a chilling manner. Ink couldn't match it and instead turned away. 404 looked at him, and then stood up and broke out of the Ink restraints, which surprised Ink himself. What the Dash? However, before he could say anything, 404 would slam him to the ground face first, keeping him there. I know your dumbass didn't think of this. Who was it? 404 shouted. Let go of him, puppet master, said a voice behind him. 404's head turned around and saw him, Alpha, the ghost of the multiverse, rumored to be going around helping a youth and leading lost ones to salvation. 404 got up, holding Ink by his neck. So, I'm guessing you are him, yeah? 404 asked. Yes, and you're the one who's going around running people's lives. Alpha said. Doesn't sound like my problem. 404 said. Not your problem. You go around flaunting your superiority all over the multiverse, and for what? So you can feel better about yourself, or just cause you want to? Alpha shouted at him. 404 looked at him, and scanned his body and stance. It was strong and firm. Alpha wasn't emitting any fear off his person or aura. Strange, he isn't scared of me. Then again, a few rare cases aren't either. 404 thought to himself. Sorry. I let my guard down. Ink cried. I'll deal with you later. Alpha said as he then looked at 404 again. Last time I'm asking, put him down. Alpha said in a threatening manner. To be fair, I believe we might be able to solve this with talking. I'd hate to kill someone who could be such a good partner. 404 said. I have no need for a partnership with a monster. Alpha said. I'm not a monster. Monsters are the people you protect. Look around you. 404 said as he then dopped ink, and ink crawled away from the two. 404's eyes moved towards the dead AU. The desolate wasteland which held no life, even beyond the stars. The creators of this world and others don't care for their creations. Just the love it'll bring them. They love the attention, the lights, the cameras, and the glory. Always wanting to one-up the other in an attempt to make themselves feel better. These AUS you protect aren't universes, they're advertisements. 404 said. However, as he turned his head, he dodged out of the way as Alpha went to strike at his head, throwing a quick punch that nearly hit. 404 then attempted to use blue mastery on Alpha, yet it didn't work. No physical form, huh? A light then. 404 said as he then jumped back. Alpha looked at him angered and clearly in a rage. Stop talking about these worlds like you understand what it's like to live in a home. A pathetic piece of trash like you could never understand the feeling of losing everything you love. Alpha shouted as he ran towards 404. However, 404 would put a row of orange bones which caught Alpha and began to burn at his body. Alpha looked in shock as he took damage. Aha, so they can still catch you. Good to know. 404 said. That impossible. Even if they're orange they shouldn't have harmed me. Is he dash? However, just as Alpha looked up he'd see 404 fire his blaster at him, which he dodged out of the way of, modifying his weaponry to be able to hit non-physical things. Alpha thought as he flew into the sky and looked down as 404 fired hundreds more. Alpha activated his double eyes, and then guarded against the barrage. Suddenly 404 would get wrapped up in ink restraints once again. 404 just before he could break them would have Alpha appear behind him. See you in hell. Alpha screamed as he then began to use his banishment ability, and send 404 to his own personal hell. 404 would scream as the ability began to take hold over him. Alpha looked at him as it took place. Yeah, you got him. Ink shouted in joy at the smart move. 404 screamed as his eyes rolled all the way to the back of his head. However, the ability would then fizzle out with 404 still standing there. Alpha looked in shock as 404's eyes, which had rolled to the back of his head, rolled back forward again. A wide grin would appear on his face as he looked at Alpha. CK. 404 smiled. 404 then broke out of the ink's restraints and balled his fist up tighter than he ever had, and then punched Alpha straight in the chest, completely bypassing his non-physical physiology, and punching like as if he was actually physical. The attack sent Alpha flying straight off-world, and all the way across the universe until Alpha's body stopped after hitting a ringed planet on the complete opposite side. 404 vs. Alpha Part 1. 404 put his arm down as he looked up into the sky. He saw that the stars and galaxies that once filled the sky had been destroyed from the sheer force he had sent Alpha flying with. He then looked down and towards Ink. Ink got his brush and got ready to fight, to which 404 then simply used his blue mastery and crushed his ribcage, causing Ink to plummet to the ground in sheer pain. You've forgotten your place, 404 said as he then put his foot on Ink's head and began to apply pressure. Ink was screaming as 404 just looked down at him. Suddenly, though, just as he was gone, Alpha came crashing down on top of 404, creating a hole in the planet. Alpha then flew around the atmosphere and looked for him. You missed, 404 said. Alpha turned around only to get a blaster to the face. Alpha then phased through it and flew where he heard 404, but couldn't see him. Stop hiding, damn it, Alpha shouted. Why would I hide from someone weaker than me? You just aren't that fast, 404 said before Alpha then got blasted more blasters, which he dodged out of the way of them. 404 landed on a nearby moon only to have Alpha show up behind him and attempt to strike him again. 404 dodged it once again before sending a wave of orange bones at Alpha, to which he destroyed by summoning his DT blade. Alpha pointed it at 404, who stared at it, its light shining off of 404's eyes. Ooh, shiny, 404 said as he smiled at him. You should take this more seriously, cause when I do dash, Alpha then blitzed behind 404, who turned around just before Alpha could lop his head. He dodged out of the way, But Alpha was behind him yet again. He got faster. 404 thought to himself as Alpha struck at 404's back, causing a deep gash. 404 went flying forward as Alpha then flew above him and dove down, punching him in the back of the skull and smashing 404 into the moon, destroying its surface. Alpha among the chaos looked around for 404, however instead would see the pieces of the moon getting flung at him, which he began to cut down. 404 then hid amongst the destruction and turned to see Saturn's moons. He then grabbed them with his blue mastery and flung them at Alpha as he was distracted. Alpha turned around and dodged the first moon, and then cut down the rest before more of 404's blasters rammed into him. 404 then threw his arm up, causing them to detonate at the same level of multiple universes, blowing up in Alpha's face. 404 then used his blue mastery to contain the explosion. No good. With that physiology of his, all of these won't have an effect. I got to face him head on. 404 said as he then landed on another planet in another solar system, moving there instantly. 404 looked around for Alpha as he stood there. The sun in the middle of the solar system shining bright behind him. Though I can still make blaster able to hit him. Makes me wonder if God Ray may work. Let's find out. 404 said then Alpha's blade came shooting out of the darkness of space and slicing off 404's arm. 404 watched as his arm went flying, only for Alpha to come in and clothesline him, sending him dropping to the ground. 404 coughed up some blood. His eyes darted around as Alpha was gone. All of those AUS you've destroyed, those homes and people, they didn't deserve what you dealt them. So now, it's time for you to feel that same pain. Alpha shouted. Yet 404 couldn't pinpoint where his voice was coming from. Alpha then came from underneath him and punched 404 so hard in the skull it shattered, sending 404's body flying. Alpha came out of the ground as he watched 404's body drop to the ground with a massive thud. Must suck having to die so pathetically. Alpha said as he powered down, putting his blade away. But before he went to go get ink, he then stopped in his tracks as something hit him. Wait, why didn't his soul shatter? Alpha thought to himself as he turned around, and then watched in horror as 404's body jumped up and landed on its feet. That's some strength you got there. Also that hurt like hell. 404 said. Alpha looked at him in confusion due to the fact 404 had no head. How are you not dead? Alpha asked in shock. Well, that's simple. 404 said as he scratched the stub of his neck. You're too weak. 404 said. Alpha then blitzed to 404, summoning his sword again. However, that's when a giant hand would come out of the planet and swat Alpha away. Alpha skid across the ground. More hands then attempted to crush him and hit. However, Alpha would phase through them and even cut them down. 404 would then reform himself completely by shortening the time it would normally take to regenerate by absorbing some of the universe they were in. Phew, that was close. That almost scared. Almost. 404 said as he then dodged another attack from Alpha. Rotten piece of just fucking die. Alpha screamed. I can't die, not until I find out just who made that machine and where Error is. 404 said. You won't get the chance to do anything. Alpha shouted as he kept swinging at 404, who dodged each of his attacks before he then summoned blasters to ram into Alpha. This move again? Alpha said as he stood in place. Each of the blasters attempting to ram into him from different directions. There were hundreds of them. Each one would get cut down by Alpha and his slash strikes, which would even cut down faraway stars. As he then turned back to 404 to see he was gone. What? Alpha said as he looked around, still dodging the attacks. Just where the hell did he go? Alpha was sure he was locked onto him before. His darted around the battlefield. However, as the blasters flew at him, one of them opened their mouth behind Alpha to reveal 404 inside it, charging his God Ray. Alpha turned around too late as 404 shot him with the God Ray, which then stunned him completely. You should really cover your blind spots. 404 said with a smirk, before he then hopped onto the top of his blaster, and then made all of his blasters point at Alpha. Omnidirectional erasure blast. 404 said as he then fired all of his blasters at once, which struck at Alpha, creating a massive explosion which destroyed the entire dead universe. 404 landed in the anti-void. He looked around for any signs of Alpha, but found nothing. Good, he must have finally dashed. Just as he said that, Alpha punched him in the face, sending 404 flying, until he would land on his back. 404 got up with blood dripping from his mouth. Son of a bitch. Just how can you stand to live with yourself? You just dated a whole universe. With possible alien life beyond the stars. Do you have no shame or guilt? Alpha screamed at him, to which 404 just looked at him and smirked. Possibly? Why would I feel sorry for things that you aren't even sure exist? 404 said, to which Alpha's eyes grew with shock. You're a goddamn monster. Alpha said with a shaky voice. A monster? No, I'm a god. 404 laughed. 404 versus Alpha Part 2. 404 and Alpha continued to battle one another, with 404 continuing to dodge and evade Alpha's attacks. Alpha throwing attack after attack at 404 to no effect. You say such interesting things, Alpha. I'd figure someone like yourself to be like me. Seeing these worthless scraps of code as nothing more than pieces of dialogue, going back and forth from A to B. 404 said as Alpha struck at him again. 404 blocked it with his arm as the attack was too quick. Alpha cut the arm clean off. 404 grunted as he backed up and created an entire fortress of orange bones around him. Or maybe, that's what you hate me for. Because I act the way you wish you could. Well, sorry, but I got here first, second rate. 404 said. Shut up. Like I'd ever want to be anything like you. All you do is take and take. What do you give to this world? Ha! Tell me. Alpha shouted as he charged up his DT blade and got ready to strike the fortress. Tila me. Alpha screamed as he then cut through the fortress, only for it to explode in his face, sending him flying. Alpha skid across the ground. Turning his head around, he saw that there was actually a blaster in the fortress. A blaster? I could have sworn I saw him go inside there. Alpha thought to himself. He then would get shot with a god ray to the back. Son of a, you damn coward. Alpha stuttered. 404 was standing behind him. He then put up his stub of an arm, looked over to another AU. Don't. Alpha shouted. 404 looked over to him, and then back to the AU, and then absorbed its code to increase the pace of his healing. Alpha's eyes grew in anger as he then began to grind his teeth. I can't stand people like you know. People who try to do the right thing, but then try to put down others like as if you're better than them. I can sense it, know. When someone's destroyed an AU. That AU we were in before, you destroyed it, didn't you? 404 said. Alpha looked at him, his eyes filled with absolute rage. Flashes to his past came over him, seeing that person again, the sharp bone, ugly smile and horrible laughter. You're just like him. Alpha muttered. Ha. 404 said. The stun of the god ray wore off as Alpha then blitzed at 404. 404 couldn't react in time, and got punched straight through his chest. Where is your soul, monster? Or do you not possess one? Alpha said with his locked 404's. 404's mouth began to run with blood as he gave Alpha a smile back. Sorry, but you must be 30 leagues too stupid if you think I'd tell you that. 404 said as he got flung away by Alpha. 404 looked back as he stopped himself, only for Alpha to come from behind and chop off 404's legs and grab him by his neck and slammed him to the ground. He stabbed him in the shoulder. Fuck. This guy isn't letting up. He's getting stronger the longer I fight him. I need to end this and now. 404 thought. Die, Alpha said with a killing glare as he got ready to slice 404's head in half, but instead would slice off 404's hands. Just so you can't stun me, AG dash. However, he would still be hit with a god ray, much to his shock. How? Alpha shouted as he struggled to turn his head and looked to see 404's lower body and see a burnt hole coming from one of his shoes. Did he fire it with his toe? Alpha thought in pure shock. 404 then used his blue mastery and recontent his body. He used the code around him in the anti-void to speed up the process once again. He got up and saw his jacket had been completely destroyed. He signed as tore off the rest of it. His eyes then looked to Alpha. That'll be the last time you do that. 404 said. Alpha simply looked at him. Sorry, but I have to go find my student. I don't have time to play with Ghost. I'm ending this. 404 said as he then grabbed Alpha by his shirt and teleported them into another multiverse. They appeared right in front of another Error and Ink. What the? Error and Ink shouted. You don't like me datoring universes, huh? Well, I got a good show for you, Ghost Boy. 404 said. He then used his hands and spread them out. Wait, don't. Run away now. Alpha screamed at Error and Ink. Error and Ink looked at each other, and then tried to rush 404. You damn fools. Don't even try it. You're in way over your fucking heads. 404 screamed as he then roared as he destroyed every universe inside of this multiverse in front of Ink, Alpha and Error's eyes. All of them looked in complete horror at the act. 404 then looked at Error. You want to datory the multiverse, right? Destroy this. He said as he then used his blue mastery and lifted him up. He then used his other hand and fired his God Ray at Alpha again, stunning him one more. You damn bastard. Alpha screamed at him. Let him go. Ink shouted as he smashed his brush against 404's head, but the brush didn't even connect. 404 simply looked at him. Ink went flying backwards, his entire chest and ribs being destroyed by a single glare. 404 then used his other hand to absorb all the code from hundreds of multiverses. He then got his finger and focused it all into one point. Let's see you destroy this. 404 said as he then put all of the code into Error. Error didn't feel anything at first, but he began to glitch out and break into code fragments until finally combusting into pieces and blood all over the place. The blood drenched 404's face and Alpha's clothes. Alpha and Ink looked in shock. 404 then looked to Ink and used his blue mastery on him. He spread his fingers out, which ripped Ink into pieces, tearing his body apart. You like the squid, right? Then you can have him. 404 shouted as he then threw the pieces at Alpha, stabbing him with them. Should have stayed dead. Rotten Ghost. Stayed dead with the rest of the OU came from. 404 shouted. Alpha's rage flared as his tears turned brighter, and he then broke out and blitzed to 404, sucker punching him in the face. However, the punch only sent him skidding away a few feet. Blood dripped from 404's face. Shadow covered his face as he then raised one hand to Alpha, gesturing for him to come at him. Just what the fuck are you? Alpha said in total fear. 404 versus Alpha final part. Alpha looked at 404 with terror in his eyes. 404's eyes were cold and menacing. Alpha simply looked at him as he got out his DT blade once again. You damn monsters, all the lives. How could you do something so fucking monstrous? Alpha shouted at him as he flew to 404 and swung only for his blade to break on 404's head. Alpha looked in shock as 404 then grabbed him by his shirt and headbutt him, breaking Alpha's nose. 404 the grabbed universe from another multiverse and flung them at Alpha. Alpha dodged a few, but then got bombarded with millions of them. You keep saying that. 404 said as he then detonated the universes, causing an unfathomable explosion that he didn't even flinch in the face of. In fact, he took no damage as he stood mere inches from the blast. Alpha then rampaged out of the explosion, now being corrupted judge. He went over and sucker punched 404 right in the face, sending him flying. He's even stronger now. A new form. 404 said as he slid across the ground. He then looked over and dodged Alpha's next barrage of fist and then would duck under his hate blade slash. How many more? How many lives must die until we're satisfied? Screamed Alpha. As many as are necessary to bring back what I lost. 404 said. Enough. Alpha said as he went to grab 404 by his neck, only for 404 to catch Alpha's hands. Never. 404 shouted as he then gripped Alpha tightly. Alpha would attempt to headbutt him, but 404 would dodge it, and then summon orange bones between them, pushing Alpha backwards. 404 looked at Alpha as he stared him down. You think this reality is yours to control, but you don't even know, do you? That every single one of us will fight you to end if we have to. Alpha said. This reality is mine, everything is mine. The universes, the multiverses, and especially this fucking reality. If you feel you can stop me, Then come and fucking try it. 404 said. Alpha then blitzed towards him, but before he could get to him, 404 would then put his hands together and instantaneously create a small orb. Let's see how you handle this, 404 said as he then expanded the orb, and it overtook the multiverse and thousands of others around them. Alpha covered his eyes as the blinding light shined on him. Once it ended, he looked around and saw he was on a giant pillar of blue bones. He looked around and saw giant skeleton heads floating around with numbers in their sockets in excess as eyes. Alpha looked down and saw it was a giant sea of code. He could see billions upon billions of numbers and digits all over the place. What the hell is all this? Alpha said, looking around. He then would get bombarded with giant orbs which attached to his body, keeping him from moving. He tried to phase through them, but it didn't work. Don't bother, your little non-physical shit won't work anymore. I control code. You may be weird, but you're still coded. Which means I own you, ghost boy. 404 said. As if. Alpha said as he wiggled his arm out and summoned his hate blade. Alpha looked at the orbs and felt their energy. He was shocked with what he felt. Each orb that was attached to him felt like a multiverse. Welcome to my domain, the true multiverse. I'm God here. 404 said as he looked at Alpha's face, which was painted with anger and rage. He's not gonna let up. Time to finish this. 404 said as he landed on the coded sea. 404 fired his God ray at the orbs. Alpha looked in shock as they then detonated and exploded. 404 sent billions more at Alpha, who collected himself and began to cut them down. He then dodged the next ones and flew right at 404. He sliced him in half. However, when he did, all he saw was ink instead. What? Alpha said in total shock and distress. He then looked around as millions of inks spawned around him. Your love for these pathetic NPCs is admirable, but it's also a weakness, said one ink as it punched Alpha in the back of the head. Alpha then pushed it away and punched the next who tried to attack him. Come out and face me. Coward. Alpha. You know what they say about cowards dash. That's when a group of inks jumped Alpha. Alpha punched, sliced and kicked them away. Each time he felt even worse for doing so. However, Alpha then saw 404 moving through the crowd of them. He then blitzed them and towards him. Just when he reached 404, 404 would grab a ink and put it in front of him, stopping Alpha in his tracks. Please. I don't want to die, begged the ink. 404's cold eyes stared at Alpha from behind the ink. Alpha looked at him with worry and sorrow.
Coward's life, Fichters die quick.
Luckily a lot of both. 404 said as he then tossed the ink towards Alpha, who caught him only for it ink to combust in Alpha's face and send him flying backwards, right into a crowd of inks. Alpha screamed out of confusion and panic, completely messed up in the head from what 404 had been doing, and showed him. They're all dead because of you. Why do you keep killing us? Screamed the inks as they grabbed Alpha and pulled on him. Alpha eventually reverted back to his normal state as he gave up. 404 then blitzed to him and sucker punched Alpha in the gut, causing him to cough up blood. You tried to send me to hell. Now I'm gonna make you live it, 404 said as he then created a whirlpool out of the coded sea. The inks fell back while holding Alpha, who struggled against them. Arg! Damn you, 404. This isn't over. I'll kill you. You motherfucking monster. I'll fucking you. Alpha screamed as he got dragged down into the whirlpool and into his own personal hell, as 404 looked down at him. I'm not a monster, I'm demon. I'm the white demon, 404 said as he then closed the whirlpool. He then closed his domain and put it into a small tiny ball smaller than a seed. He gripped it in his hand and then crushed it. Come back from that. He then threw the pieces into the air and pointed his finger at them. Bang! He said as he fired his God ray at them and destroyed it completely. 404 then flew out of the multiverse. He looked down at it before destroying it too. 404's cold expression still on his face. The hunt. Back in the main multiverse, Ink was resting himself and fixing his wounds in the doodle sphere. Damn it, I was useless that whole fight. I hope Adam is okay, Ink said as he rested himself. As he did, he would suddenly get wrapped in blue mastery. He then would get pulled out of the doodle sphere and across the entire multiverse. He kept getting pulled until he was out of the multiverse, where he saw a cold and menacing 404 drenched in blood holding his hand out. Ink's throat went straight into 404's hands, which he held tightly. Were you aligned with the ones who took error? Talk while you still can. 404 said. I don't know anything, honest. I swear. Ink shouted to him. 404 then used his blue mastery to remove Ink's fingers off one of his hands. Ink screamed only for 404 to grab his mouth. This intensity is so intense. So dangerous and deadly. Yes, this is exactly what I like about you, said Malware deep in 404's mind. However, 404 was so out of it that he didn't even register Malware's voice.
TELLMTHETRUTH.
404 said in an even more colder tone. One Ink didn't think it was possible for him to get. 404 then grabbed Ink's head and read his aura. He could feel Ink was telling the truth. Thanks for nothing, you useless piece of ink. 404 said as he then used his blue mastery to stab Ink's fingers back into his hand and toss him to the side. 404 blitzed back into the multiverse, shaking it upon entry. King. Multiverse was sitting on his throne as 404 landed right in front of him, nearly destroying the anti-void core. Frisk was standing in front of King. Multiverse with fear in their eyes. Holy shit. For it's you. King said, sweating as he saw 404 get and look at him. King saw 404 was drenched in blood, and instantly began to think of the worst possible scenarios. 404 began walking towards him. He started to read King's aura and could already read the guilt coming off him. Tell me what you know. 404 said. I don't know, Dash. Don't you fucking lie to me. What did you do? 404 asked as his every step made the entire multiverse shake and the spatial dimensions around it detonate. King was completely paralyzed in fear. 404 was finally face to face with King Mutiverse, his cold gaze staring at King, who sunk into his seat drenched in sweat. Will Dash 404 then used his blue mastery and lifted up Core. Frisk with one hand and began to choke them. Core. Frisk squealed and skirmed around. Hey, what are you, Dash? Answer me. Now, while they still have some breath left. 404 said as he then saw random jailed Toriel in one of the lifted cages above. He then used his blue mastery on her atoms, and caused her to instantly combust in front of everyone's eyes. King and Core looked in complete horror. Speak! 404 shouted as he chalked Core even more. King looked at Core and then to the bloody cage, organs and body parts falling out it. His eyes then slowly went to 404, who was looking right down at him. Red and blue, pain and love. Love is like a barbed dagger. Wield it and you are mighty, however the barbs attached to it sink deep. Unremovable and not so easily torn apart. Even when separated from that dagger, you will always have the imprints of what once was thought to be glued to you. Never forget. Shadowcle 15/Carry Wiles. 404 would wake up. His eyes stared at the ceiling of a bedroom. His breath was steady, low and cold. His eyes then looked next to him as he saw Player. They were sleeping, their arms locked with 404's right one. 404 then noticed a blue light on his face. He looked over and saw that he had used blue mastery to crush a trash can. 404 then saw someone looking at him inside the closet in the room. His eyes relaxed and focused on it to see none other than Jacob looking back at him. He shook his head violently and saw the hallucination disappear. 404 got up and sat on the edge of the bed. 404's eyes began to tear up as he covered his face with his hands. What am I doing? Oh, someone tell me please. He mumbled to himself as he then looked at his hands. The teardrops lingering on his face. Are you crying, boy? Said a familiar voice. He looked over and saw a mirror on the dresser in front of him. His eyes focused on it until he then saw pink smoke seep out of it. He stood up and looked at it. His reflection morphing into his mother. The astral mother. 404's eyes rested on the mirror. Crying. I haven't seen you do that since you were a child. You were so young I don't think you were even able to walk yet. She told him. 404 looked down at his feet. I'm going to be honest, I cried a lot more than that. Though you were never there to see it. 404 said. I wasn't. Astral said as she rubbed her chin. 404 then sat back down on the bed as he thought on it. No, you weren't. 404 said. Astral looked at him. Do you really want an apology from me? Want me to give you a hug? Tell you I love you and that I did everything for you and your annoying brother? Said the astral mother. 404 just looked at her, with a face blanketed and filled with melancholy. Tell me, William, tell me. What is it that you want? Or, have you already forgotten it? I gave you what you needed. She said. 404 closed his eyes as he put his hands on his head and over his eyes. Player began to wake up as he rubbed his eyes. He was ready to open his mouth, but then hear 404 sniffling. Years of excellent schooling. Whenever you had a problem, Quenya was there. Your brother there to help you grow a spine, and me there to teach you what you needed to know about being a genius. I gave you everything you could have ever wanted. She said. 404 looked at her pissed. I gave you the world. She screamed at him. I didn't need the world. I needed you. 404 screamed out at her. He ran forward and punched the mirror. 404 took heavy breaths, completely exhausted, as he then collapsed to the floor. Player got up and ran over to 404 and held him up. Hey, I got you. He said. 404 stuttered as he grabbed the dresser roughly. 404 began to cry as he grabbed a hold of Player. Shh, it's okay. Player said as he held 404 tight to him. He rubbed 404's back. Talk to me, say something. Player said. 404 eyes looked at the ground, his tears staining Player's sweater. 404 then touched and rubbed Player's red hair. He leaned on his shoulder. He couldn't do this with no other. The only other half he had was gone. What was he to do? What could he do? The embrace felt real, the words even more. He just wanted to melt for a moment again. Forget about it all. He wanted for an instant to let go of William, to just be 404. To love someone else and be someone else. But how could he? Player grabbed his face and looked at 404's eyes, but they were facing the ground. You know something I learned while I was here? I learned how sometimes loving something too much, how it can poison you, make you worse than when you vowed to love it forever. You do everything you can to extend, keep it alive, maybe even make it look like when you first saw it. But that love will never be the same, it just won't. Sometimes there isn't anything you can do, but let it go. You are too good to be dedicating your existence something that isn't here anymore. Something you can't see, touch, or even smell. Please learn the lesson I did. Learn that not all love can last forever, William. Player said. 404's eyes looked up to Player, whose eyes were filled with something else. Some emotion that 404 wouldn't be able to comprehend till the end of his own life. 404 thought about all the AUs he had destroyed before. He remembered the faces, each one of them. The look of despair, hopelessness and anguish. Everything was being taken away from them by a force beyond their own control. Their faces were of pain. They were of loss. They wore his face. And now, it was him doing what he once would have killed everyone to stop. What was he to do? All he could think of was just the idea of the fact that maybe this wouldn't have happened had a different choice been made long ago. The fight. Null came down from the roof and landed far behind Cyber Nightmare and 404 along with Mecha 404. You're quite the fascinating specimen, William. I'm honestly impressed with how well you dash. However, before Null could even finish, 404 used his blue mastery. Noises could be heard above them, and instantly Mecha came flying down to their level and floated to 404's hand, which he then grabbed his neck. Release error to me, or he dies. 404 said. Tish, the man is only good at making me machines. Null said. Wait. I can tell you where he is. Just don't kill me. Mecha shouted. 404 looked at him. Fuck that. Kill them all, William. They won't give you any answers. RIP it all apart. This entire world. Tear it to shreds. Malware screamed to 404 in his head. 404's eyes then went from white to dead cold blue. He then turned Mecha around and crushed his head. Oil and blood spilt out before 404 then grabbed both sides and ripped him in two as he still screamed. Null watched him. I was under the idea you were a bit more composed. Null said. Shut up. 404 said as he threw both pieces of Mecha to the side. Well, either way, Mecha 404 has gone through some major modifications since your last bout. Let's just see how well you do now. Null said as he then disappeared deeper into the facility. Mecha 404 and Cyber. Nightmare circled around 404 ready to attack him at second. I'm so fucking tired of things getting in my way. I'm about ready to fucking explode. 404 shouted as he then back up into Mecha 404 with such speed Mecha 404 went flying through the walls behind him. Cyber. Nightmare sent its tentacles at 404 to which he stopped with his gaze and then tore to shreds. You were always useless, Nightmare, now look at you. You're just pure scrap metal. 404 said as he then used his mind to rust Cyber. Nightmare to pieces. He turned back only to get punched by Mecha 404 who sent him flying out of the facility and chased after him. Abyss met up with Null in a hallway. He's going to fucking kill us. Abyss screamed at him. Relax, he won't get past Mecha. Not to mention my project is nearly complete. Null said. What? That calculated heaven thing? What even is it? Abyss asked. Null turned to him. Come and find out. Null said as he kept walking. The two eventually went to an elevator that went deeper into reality itself. Abyss looked around as he could see the mainframe around them as they kept going. Eventually they got another facility underneath it. Null walked forward with Abyss following him. They would soon reach a large door to which Null punched into a small code and it would open. That's when Abyss would see it. A giant glowing sphere bigger than any cluster multiverses or hell even a hyperverse. It was beyond size itself. What the hell is that? He asked. This is calculated heaven. It is the dreams and hopes of every being within reality itself. There is no stronger force within this reality than it. This is what I want to make. A new variant of reality where everyone be happy, and their dream can exist. A place where my son. Null stuttered as he thought about it. He then shook his head and looked at Abyss. Besides that, we have another asset we can use. In fact, he should be ready right now. Null said. Back outside though 404 and Mecha 404 were going blow for blow. The machine easily keeping up with 404 in his attacks. 404 then used Blue Mastery on it to stop Mecha 404. He then slammed him rapidly against the ground and nearby objects. Mecha 404 struggled against Blue Mastery until it fired rockets from its chest which exploded in 404's face causing him to slide back. Mecha 404 then blasted towards 404 and clotheslined him. He then grabbed 404's legs and would slam him into the ground. Mecha 404 then lifted his foot and attempted to stomp on 404. Only for 404 to roar and send him flying into thin air. Stupid machine. Get out of my way. 404 shouted as he then got ready to use his Blue Mastery on Mecha 404. However, his hands would be restrained by Cyber. Nightmare's tentacles. 404 looked over and saw Cyber. Nightmare on a nearby tree. It then pulled 404 forward. You wanna gang up on me? Fine. 404 shouted as he then pulled hundreds of US from a distant part of the multiverse and threw them at Mecha. 404 using his Blue Mastery Mecha. 404 turned quickly and attempted to dodge, but 404 would force him down with his Blue Mastery causing for a massive explosion as all those US detonate right in front of him. 404 turned around and watched as Cyber. Nightmare was blown to bits from the explosion. 404 then looked at the continuing explosion and then used his Blue Mastery to shrink it into a mere atomic size. 404's eyes then looked back at the facility and attempted to make his way back before he then got hit in the back by a blast sending him sliding along the floor. 404 turned around to see Mecha. 404 still intact. 404 groaned as he got up. He then nearly fell over again as he leaned against a tree. Damn it! Why am I so tired? Is it cause of that fight I had with the ghost? Or did this motherfucker's blast actually hit me that hard? 404 said as he got up. He turned around and then slumped against the tree. 404 shook his head beating against it to stay focused. He looked forward and saw Mecha. 404 getting ready to fire another barrage of attacks at him with his cannons. However, just as he was getting ready, some strange purple sphere would get thrown at Mecha. 404 causing a massive explosion. 404 looked at it and looked behind him to see no one. Well, don't we look like a... shouted a voice from above. 404 looked up into the tree behind him to see a strange Sans with a hole in his head and a patch. How's it going, Blue? Been looking for you. said the skeleton. Chaos Across the Multiverse Part 1. 404 An infected looked at Mecha 404. Mecha 404 loaded up its arms. As it did, 404 could see the code in its arms flowing through it. The gears turning and the engines revving. 404 clenched his fist tight. Null looked over the battlefield, the entire multiverse. Seems as though they've started. I know Mecha is great, but they are still just a machine. Best send in Blitz and Gorg. 'Cause soon I'll have all the pieces necessary to make this plan a success. Null said as he then opened up a null void one-way portal. This portal allowed for him to view anything going on in existence, rather it be now, in the past or even far future, and it wasn't even limited to where he was at. He used it to see Killer.jpg and D+ traveling and running through the hell dimension. Alphas. The two were running through the ruins when they eventually reach a dead end. The fifth one they've encountered. Another one? Damn, and I was so certain it was this way. Killer.jpg said, scratching his chin. D+, however, was furious and began to stomp and punch at the wall. Could this dimension actually be shifting and changing around us? Manipulating the environment? There's no way that Alpha guy made this. What do you think, D? Killer. JPG asked. Who fucking cares? That's what I goddamn think, JPG. All I want is to get out of here. I'm tired of being here, and no offense, but I'm getting fucking tired of you too. D+ said as he stuffed his hands into his jack pockets. Sounds offensive when you put fucking in front of it. Killer.jpg said as he leaned against the left wall. Killer watched and looked at D+ moving back and forth. Oh, I get it now, you're afraid. Killer.jpg said. Afraid? What in the fuck do I have to be afraid about? I'm the most dangerous thing in this bitch besides the cringe emitting off of these sleazy knockoffs. D+ said. Maybe you're scared because them being here is resurfacing some balled up emotions? Maybe even becoming like them. Killer.jpg said. TCH. As if. I'd have to actively try to be a complete waste of space to be anything remotely on par with those sheep. D+ said. But you're just like them, you're a dust. Killer.jpg said. So? Doesn't mean I gotta be like them. They all just want one thing, to be just like the old man, but just a little different. All those mimics are looking for his approval, like as if he's their daddy or whatever. They think if they keep killing, everything will be fine. That maybe someday they can be like him. Wanted and adored. Loved and appreciated, but none of that comes from murder. The others act like animals, see a piece of dangling flesh and they all come for it like wolves. Maybe if they looked more at how this all started, they'd see how pointless it all really is. D+ said. Aren't you just doing what they are? Don't you feel like this is all a waste of time? Killer.jpg asked. Maybe. D+ said. His face was holding an expression of confusion, but not at anyone else yet himself. He began thinking about his life so far and what exactly he's been doing with it. Did this all matter? Why was he pointing to himself to be the one to do this? He broke free of their cycle. The cycle of violence ever thus followed, but what's he doing now? Applying it to them. Was he wasting his chance at a better life beyond murder? Beyond being a dust? There he is, shouted familiar voices. D+ and Killer.jpg looked over to see it was Killer. Dust Outer. Dust Rainbow. Dust and even Dust who had all shown up around the corner. No way. There's more. Killer.jpg shouted. Didn't I already kill you fuckheads? Well, double kill you. D+ said. Chaos Across the Multiverse, Part 2. D+ stared at once was Outer. Dust. He turned his head back to Killer.jpg. He wouldn't understand, he isn't like you. He would never understand what the burden of being a dust truly feels like. To be a killer, a murderer beyond repair, but you can change that. Amongst all the copies of the original, only you can stand to fix them, only you can save their pitiful existence, said Burning Dust. D+ looked down at Outer. Dust's melted and burned face. They will continue to rip everything apart, kill countless, ruin countless other worlds and more, just to reach that perfection and that stature that the original posses, said Burning Dust. D+ looked back at Killer one last time before walking ahead. He walked through the ruins, through dusty Snowden and even towards Waterfall. Once he reached it though, he found a large pit completely filled with the corpses of every human, monster and more that each variant of the original Dust had killed. He looked down. What is this? He asked. These are all of them, victims from the lot of you. Some of your bodies are in here too. Burning Dust said. Why are you helping me? D+ asked. Not helping, just steering. What you do is of your own will. Burning Dust said. D+ looked at his dusty hands. Flashes of blood appeared in front of him. All their blood is on you. What will you do? Go back and continue to repeat the same cycle forever? Or will you show the true difference between you and them? Burning Dust said as the DT demon then showed its true form. Trust me, you can do it. You can wipe out all of the false copies across the Omniverse. All you need is more determination. With it, you can do anything, said the DT demon. I can do anything? D+ said. His mind was growing foggy. His body began to feel numb at being around the demon. Yes, all you need to do is accept me. Accept me as your provider, your keeper of determination, and I can grant your every wish, said the demon. D+ looked at the demon, his mind clearly in a daze. Trust good ol' Alistair to take care of you and your goals, said Alistair. That's when, however, a knife would flying past him and D+. They both looked over to see Killer.jpg there huffing and puffing. Away from him, demon. Or I will kill you, he shouted. Alistair looked back at him and then to D+. Think about my offer. 'Cause if you don't, then you'll eventually turn out just like them. Another dust with the bodies of the innocent screaming beneath you. For all eternity. Make the right choice, Damien. Do you serve in a temporary heaven? Or rule in the eternal hell for those you will bring to justice? Said Alistair as he began to fade away. Killer.jpg ran up and attempted to slash at Alistair, but he was already long gone. He turned to D+ and grabbed his shoulders. Hey, snap out of it. Killer shouted, shaking D+. D+ stood there for a moment before then reopening his eyes. What the hell am I doing out here? D+ asked. SME weird demon thing was trying to trick you. Do we need to get the fuck out of here and fucking quick? Otherwise who knows who else will show up? Killer said as he began walking past the pit of bodies. D+ looked down at them as he remembered the words of Alistair that rung in his head. Hey, Killer shouted. D+ looked up to him. Let's go, Killer shouted. D+ took one last look before moving ahead with him. However, atop nearby floating block were two figures watching them. It would seem that things are beginning to move. If we aren't careful, they may find the door, said a feminine voice from one of them. We'll just have to make sure they get out of here then. No need for them to stay any longer. We'll have to move them ahead of the game. It will require changing already set futures for them both, said a male voice. Doesn't matter, change it. We can't have them finding out, said the female voice once again. The male then smiled widely as he then put his hand out, and then altered the flow of D+ and Killer's stories, shifting it ever so much that the change was completely unnoticeable. The male walked forward and saw the two completely change their direction with no words to say. Ah, how simple it is, to alter the world around another. The sweetness of preventing calamity. Yet at the same time, this feels like godhood. Like I myself am the one choosing for them. Keep walking, Killer and D+. Reach your new future that I've given you. Whatever your fates behold for you, regardless, it will be quite a show, said the male voice, his disembodied mouth and eyes tingling with excitement. Come, Difference, we have work to do. The blue dragon will not wait for us, said the woman. Yes, Holiday, said Mr. Difference as the two turned and zipped away, no longer being present in this story once again. The exit should hopefully be around here somewhere. Killer said. That's when they both saw a large rift get torn open in hell itself. Out of the rift poured out hundreds of variants of ink. Sands. Along with them came Alpha floating out, huffing and heaving as he came through. Alpha's eyes went to Killer and D+ immediately. You both, Alpha and D+, said, making eye contact with each other. They both got ready to attack the other before Killer stopped them. Wait just a moment. We aren't looking to fight now. We're looking to get out of here, Killer said. As am I. I must have burned through several of these hell dimension. Nearly made it out alive from facing some strange demonic force. Alpha said. Looks like we have the same goal then. How's about we call a small truce for now, huh? So we can get out of here. Killer said. Alpha looked at him and then to D+. D+ scoffed as he looked at Alpha. They both then put their hands down. See? That wasn't too hard. Killer said. Shut up. D plus and Alpha said. Geez, Killer groaned. Red and Blue Part 3 Your life. It had been months since 404 had done anything regarding AUS, Alpha Tail, or even talking with Error 2. 2 years to be exact. Player and 404 had done a lot in that time, from moving ahead in steps concerning their relationship to 404 just officially moving into Underplayer. Theo. After some time with him coming back and forth. The two had gotten closer than even 404 himself could have predicted. Player and him had even traveled to the human towns outside the mountain, though 404 wasn't entirely down with it. 404 was laying on the couch in Player's home. He was sleeping. Player was sitting at the table looking through some code and running some simulations on his holographic touchpad. My God. I can't believe all the code that he can just see. I need this to see all of it. And yet William can just access it with his eyes? So casually too. He truly is remarkable. I just wish he'd use those gifts for something greater than. No, I shouldn't say anything. He's having the best sleep he's having in months. Who knew sleeping pills could work on someone like him? Player chuckled. He went into the kitchen and began to make himself some coffee. He waited for a few moments before he then began to hear 404 talking. Willie, you up? Player asked. That's when they saw 404 moving a bit in his sleep, like as if he was swatting at something. No. Leave me. 404 mildly shouted. Player rushed over and grabbed 404's hand and rubbed his head. Hey. William. Calm down. Shhhhh, it's alright. Player said. 404 then opened his eyes. He looked Player's warm red eyes, those eyes. Whenever he saw them he knew he was alright. 404 took a quick breath. Player planted a kiss on his cheek. I was running. Screams. I could hear them. My mother burning. I'm sorry. 404 said. Don't apologize. I don't think I would be any kind of good state after going through what you did. But I'm glad you got some sleep. How did you feel? Dream anything? Player asked. No, nothing really. Just nothing. It was good though. Thanks for the sleeping stuff. 404 said, scratching his head. Player teleported his coffee to him and took a sip. You want some tea? Player asked. Yeah, sure. 404 said as he sat up. Player went to the kitchen to make the tea. As he did, 404 couldn't help but think about Chara. He swore he'd never leave, never forget. And yet here he was, in a relationship just as he always pictured. Only pity was, it wasn't with who he wanted it to be with. However, maybe it was with who he needed to be with. 404 shook away the thoughts. He just didn't know what to think anymore. Player came back shortly with his tea. Here, babe. Player said as he then sat next to 404 handing him his tea. Thanks. 404 nodded as he drank the tea. It was bitter, but he liked it like that. Player got him into drinking tea, supposedly some spiritual stuff or whatever. He wasn't heavy on it. However, 404 still tried it. Player usually had good ideas. So I was thinking. Player said. Oh great. 404 said. What? Player asked, a little offended at the interruption. Usually when it's I was thinking, that means we're either going somewhere or I gotta talk about something. 404 said. Player chuckled and put his coffee on the table. No, I was thinking that maybe we could try something new today? Player said. 404 titled his head. Player then wrapped his arms around 404's neck and straddled him. 404 was a little shocked at it, but he still was interested in it as he drank his tea. I want to He fixed his hair a bit. A little nervous. Even after all this time he was still nervous. You wanna fuck ya? 404 said. Chaos Across the Multiverse Part 3. Back with 404. He'd see the strange skeleton jump down from the tree and land in front of him. The skeleton would smile a wide smile at 404 as 404 simply looked at him. Who the fuck are you? 404 asked. Name's Infected, your bestest friend he. Infected chuckled as he hopped around 404. 404 looked at him annoyed before he put his arm out, stopping him. What do you want? 404 asked. I'm here to help, mostly so I can talk to you myself. I heard you may have some knowledge about the big bad multiverse. Maybe you could help me find someone. Infected said. I don't have time for this, get lost. 404 said as he started making his way back towards Abyss and Ko's base. However, Infected then ran in front of him as he started to grab something from his shorts. Now wait. I got a picture of him. Check this out, he looks like this. Infected said as he got out a poorly drawn drawing. 404 looked at it in total annoyance. It was a stick figure with blue scribbles on it to supposedly symbolize a jacket and large black dots for eyes. 404 looked up at Infected, who had a wide smile and nodded at him happily. Get the fuck out of my way, retard. 404 said as he his blue mastery and tore the drawing into pieces and pushed Infected out of the way. Hey man. It took me like 4 hours to draw that. Ain't you got some respect for arts and crafts? I hope you know all art teachers hate you. Infected shouted. Good. They need a better reason to live anyway. 404 shouted back. Why dash, but before Infected could say anything, a large shaking began to occur as the two looked over to see Mecha. 404 burst up from the ground. The machine's gears began to turn and reconfigure itself, fixing any damages to itself. Groovy toy. Infected said. It's annoying. 404 said as he then got ready to use his blue mastery, but for some reason nothing was happening. 404 widened his eyes. What? My power? 404 said, looking at his hands. That's when he saw Infected nod up towards something. 404 looked up to see two people drop down behind Mecha. 404 as they landed. Oh look, more people to judge my craftsmanship. Infected said as he and 404 looked at who had arrived. 404 looked at the two. He didn't know exactly what to make of them. A giant metal thing and blonde woman. Just who the fuck are these two? 404 thought to himself. The woman smirked as she looked at 404, and then to Infected. Hard time using your tools? I reckon I'm to blame for that, said the woman who had a thick Scottish accent. Huh, you nullified my powers. 404 said. His brain then immediately went to all the options and possibilities on how and why it could be possible. It had to be some sort of trick, or maybe it was some form of mind-like power. Shutting off a part of his brain that controls his powers, perhaps? Chaos Across the Multiverse, Part 4. 404 got up fuming as Infected looked at him chuckling. Infected then looked up to see Blitz and Gorg looking dead at them. Seems that it's our turn, Gorg, said Blitz. She stared at him and then to 404 and Infected. Outside of the O in reality, Null was watching from a sphere orb deep next to the calculated heaven. As he did, he heard someone else entering in from the elevator behind him. He turned to see the Defiled Witch coming down. You, Null said. She then teleported out of the elevator and near him. I can tell you're still not confident in your plan, Null said. Not my plan. Although you do still remember our agreement, she asked. This reality will be yours, or to your provider. Keep your hands away from the calculated heaven, and I'll assure you that your son will be given to you on a silver platter, Null said. The Defiled Witch watched as 404 and Infected battled against Gorg. She then looked to another orb and saw Alpha, JPG and D+ making their way towards the facility. They'll soon be on you. When the two sides realize who their true enemy is, you will be in trouble, said the Defiled Witch. No, they won't, Null said. That's when he grabbed a cup and reconstructed its entire molecular and atomic makeup into a small book. The Defiled Witch looked in fascination. Null began to hover towards the entrance of the elevator. Even with a small portion of the null void code, I can manipulate the structures and principles of space and time. No concept is withheld from me, no boundary is too great. They will know struggle and they will know pain, Null said as he then opened up the small book. He then began to create massive creatures. They were 10 foot tall, they were giants. With massive horns and claws, they were made of a red-like metal, small black eyes and armor made of the toughest metal ever conceived. They were terrifying and horrific to look at. Ghoulish even. There were hundreds of them. Giants, there are people here who wish to daydream my new world. A peanut world made for those who deserve a better existence than here. Kill those that struggle and bring William and Jacob to me, Null said as the giants then melted into the ground, disappearing. Null turned around to the Defiled Witch. Once the deal is finished, This reality is yours. Null said as he then hovered over to calculated heaven while the defiled witch disappeared. Back above, 404 used his blue mastery to attempt to lift Gorg, but Gorg just kept moving forward. What the hell? He's just walking through it. 404 thought. Infected then jumped onto Gorg and began to slam his axe into his head, using his Godbreaker. But Gorg was unaffected by it and pulled Infected off of him and then slammed him against the ground. Oof. Fuck. Infected shouted as he coughed up blood. 404 attempted to use his blue mastery, but that's when he'd be transported inside of dark place. As he looked around, he then saw green eyes appear around him. Well, what a beautiful mind you have here, said Blitz, her voice echoing throughout the entire void. 404's eyes darted around. You must be some kind of psychic. I don't sense that I've moved anywhere. 404 said. Good eye, wow. You're good. A pity your mind will go to waste. Blitz said. That's when 404 returned back to the snowy field only to get sucker punched by Gorg, who'd send him flying backwards. He'd go skidding across the ground and jumping up. Gorg would throw a barrage of attacks only for 404 to dodge each of them and then use his blue mastery to make a shield around himself. Gorg looked at it before he began to punch it, each one feeling like a train smashing against it. 404's feet dragged as he tried to hold his ground. Infected then would jump on top of Gorg and grab his head. Who wants snacks? You do. Infected shouted as he then opened his shirt, to which hundreds of wisps would drop down and plant themselves on Gorg. He'd then jump off and over 404's shield. Gorg looked at them before it exploded. The massive explosion shaking the entire they were all in. Mr. Undertale. Someplace else outside of everything known was a white room. 2 doors leading into it, and in the center was a glass table with 2 chairs. One of the doors would open up revealing Vape and 2 others, one that looked like 404, and the other was a rainbow skeleton with a white cloth covering his lower half. Vape walked over to the center of the room and grazed his hand on the table. Why makes you think he'll hand him over to us? From what I've heard, this guy is a narcissist, said the 404 lookalike. I'm certain he will, Vape said, a smile on his face as he pulled his seat out and sat it in. The rainbow skeleton summoned a floating arm and pushed the chair in for him. The 404 lookalike looked at the rainbow skeleton and then to the other door. They all stood there remaining silent. How are you certain? Said the 404 lookalike. Because I said so, said Vape. The 404 lookalike wanted to say something but held his tongue. He didn't want to ruin whatever plan Vape had, so he just folded his arms. This figure says he may have information about Hara and the Soul of Independence. If he does, then I'll engage with him on the matter of which he wants. However, if he's lying, then this will all be over, Vape said. Let's hope so for his sake, said the rainbow skeleton. That's when the other door would open. Vape and his party looked up to see 2 people walk through. A gray woman with short hair and pale white skin. Surrounding her were many arms. She wore a white dress with a sort of belt-like thing wrapped around her waist. The 404 lookalike looked at her and got a bit flustered at her appearance. In one of her arms she was holding a leash. Connected to it was a dog. He looked down to see it was none other than the annoying dog. However, when he looked to Vape, all he saw was him looking at the man who entered. It was him, the one man Vape wanted to meet. The man he had been hunting down and trying to lure out his entire life. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Meeting him was like meeting with everything at once. He was the cause and effect. He was reason. He was Mr. Undertale. Vape's eyes looked to the woman next to him. It was his secretary. Holiday. Chaos Across the Multiverse Part 5. A giant explosion would erupt. 404 and Infected looked over and back to Gorg in hopes that explosion would finish the job, but to no avail. Gorg was still standing there with no damage taken to him. Holy crap, that's a tough-ass cookie, Infected said as 404 then took down his shield and backed away. No kidding, but I haven't even gotten started yet, 404 said. However, that's when he'd begin to sink into the snow, which grew hands and began to pull him down. The hell? 404 shouted. That's when he saw the trees become large hands and punch him into the ground. The pain from them feeling like he was being hit by Alpha at full force. However, from Infected's perspective, he just saw 404 swinging at nothing and moving around sporadically. Infected had no idea what to think, staring at 404 acting like a total maniac. But he just shrugged and began to mimic him while laughing. Gorg immediately began to bolt towards the two of them and charged right into them, knocking 404 out of his trance and Infected nearly getting knocked out. Gorg jumped up with them both and would belly flop right on top of them. Infected tried to lift him, but his arms would just snap in half instead. 404 grunted as he immediately made a blue shield which knocked Gorg backwards. 404 and Infected got up weakly. 404 then used Blue Mastery to attempt to hold Gorg, but Gorg just kept charging after them. Infected threw a barrage of Wisp, but his attacks would prove ineffective against Gorg, who would go barreling right into Infected, who did everything he could to stop the Steel Beast's momentum. 404 was laying on his back, his face showing nothing but annoyance as he got up. He then woke up in his old room back in Alphatale. Your mental state is pathetic. I can pull just about anything apart in here. You should really see a therapist. Be a shame for someone to use anything they found out about you against you, he. Blitz chuckled as 404 just looked unamused. That's when he saw the trees around him beginning to turn into large versions of his Gaster blasters. They all fired at him at once. Meanwhile, Gorg was punching and trying to land punches on Infected, who was laughing the entire time. My attacks should be landing on you. Every part of your movement has been calculated. Predetermined. Gorg said Robotic Alley as his fist flew by Infected's head. Infected chuckled as he jumped onto Gorg's arm, and instead of punching him, Infected would detach his own head and kick it at Gorg, causing another explosion. Infected would then throw an entire ladder of Wisp down, to which he began to climb up, again with no head. Blitz was hiding away and still mentally manipulating and causing trouble for 404. That's when she saw Infected's massive ladder that reached all the way past the clouds. What the dash? Infected stopped building his ladder around the atmosphere. He stood there on top of it, thinking as the Wisp began to conjoin at his nape, repairing his head. I'm gonna blow my loaf all over this place. Is it loaf? Or am I thinking load? It doesn't fucking matter to me. 'Cause all that matters is that these fools are going back to that null guy in a bucket. Infected said as he then pulled out a black wisp from his skull. It was Sparadiric and couldn't hold still or even look around without shaking violently. Infected then gave it a quick smooch before he held it over the edge. Bombs a wowie! Infected shouted with laughter in his voice as the black wisp screamed loudly as it fell, but it wasn't a scream of fear, but more of sheer hysteria. Madness. 404 continued to confront and fight against the illusions and delusions. However, they were overwhelming. Gorg got closer to 404 as he raised his fist to destroy it. Tell me something, William. Are you proud of yourself? Blitz's voice said, echoed with as the Astral Mother's. 404 fired back at a volley of attacks. Not really. To be honest. I'm just taking life 1 second at a time. 404 said as he then was transported into a hallway. He looked down at and behind him. You and I both know that Null sees you as a threat, but you can also be a great asset. It'd be a shame to throw away such a wonderful piece of reality. One so good that it may in fact be detrimental to everything. So here's the plan, Blue. I can bring you on broken or not so broken, said Blitz as 404 kept walking down the hallway. He kept going till he arrived at a door. One painted red but covered in splashes of blue. On the other side he could hear Player and him arguing. His hand hesitated. You remember what this is, you don't want to remember what it is. Shall we revisit? Blitz said as the door began to creak open. Outside of the illusion and behind Blitz, the dark wisp began to fall closer and closer while Gorg was hovering right over 404, ready to smash him to pieces. A battle within thoughts and battle beyond imagination. As 404 got closer to the door, he began to hear murmurs, and that's when he decided to wipe the door away. Eh? Blitz shouted. Huh. So I guess I can use my own mental strength here. 404 said. That's not possible. You have no experience with the mental and or spiritual worlds and their connections. Blitz said. Perhaps, but I'd say you're the one with no experience here. Seeing how you've managed to avoid my friend. 404 said. Friend? Blitz said, confused. That's when a giant monstrous face with multiple eyes would appear in Blitz's mind. You dare attempt to rupture the host of the mighty Malware. You shall die. Malware shouted out. Blitz would scream in terror and fear before collapsing to the ground. Petrified. 404 and Malware, who was a small black sludge on 404's shoulder with eyes. Both stood in the same mental palace that Blitz had made previously. 404 looked around and could hear other minds and other people's thoughts. "Don't ever call us friends again, insect," Malware shouted. "Quiet, do you hear that? It's the thoughts of other people." When she passed out, her mental power seemed to have expanded in range. "I can hear the thoughts and see the imaginations of everyone. It's everyone in reality itself," 404 said as he looked around. That's when they'd see Blitz appear down the hall from them. "Oh great," 404 said. "I bet you felt that little trick actually did something." "Well, guess what? I didn't. But even worse, you've pissed me off. So prepare yourselves," Blitz said as she raised her hands, and with that cracks in thoughts or the thought space. Thought space is the space in which all thoughts are connected and contained. And the collective imaginations of everyone within reality itself began to emerge. "She intends to use them against us. What a interesting power," Malware said. "Yeah, but not when I'm looking into getting caught on it. We need to break out of this now," 404 said as he then combined with Malware's mental persona, and the two became J404. "Heh, nice trick. Tough for you though, since I can imagine such a being and strength existing," Blitz said as she then summoned multiple J404s that surrounded the original J404. Then stomped his foot with such power and magnitude that he datoried the imaginary realm within 404's mind, revealing the branching roads and highways of the thought space. J404 and his clones would land on one of the many infinite highways that coexist here. The true Malware, J404, was entrapped inside of Blitz's domain. It was this massive valley that overtook the entire space of the thought space. On its sides were massive cliffsides that had no end to them and went on for eternity. The only thing J404 could see was the horizon of the valley as it continued. "Welcome to my valley of thoughts. Hear anything I say and will goes. Anything you think of that defies my will cause an instantaneous shock to you, with 2x the average output of what power you already have," Blitz said with a smirk as she then lifted one of her hands in the air and pointed down the valley. "Godly devastation," she whispered, and just like that she fired the massive attack down the valley. J404 could see the blue hue of light from the attack heading his way. He attempted to block it, but was hit with an immediate shock, causing him to cough up blood, only to then be hit by the attack. The ferocity of it so powerful that he reverted back to his normal J404 state, losing his butterfly transformation as he collapsed to the ground. Blitz then made 3 more of herself, which all began to spam the attack down the valley, while she herself charged up a large blue orb on the tip of her finger. J404 slowly got up and saw a massive amount of godly devastations heading his way. "You have to be fucking kidding me, dash." He then took each of the several million head-on, each one dealing more damage and destroying more of his body. "This is the end for you, parasite," Blitz shouted. "We're gonna die if don't do something," 404 shouted. "You're still holding out on me. I can't work with such little power and durability. If you seek to prevail, then give me every drop of what I need," J404 said, annoyed as he fell to one knee and wiped blood from his mouth. "You know I can't do that. If I do, I'd never get my body back," 404 shouted. "So your precious body is more important than the safety of Gino, or the revival of your world now?" J404 said. 404 hesitated to speak. He didn't have a refute to such an attack. J404 looked up into the sky and saw the giant blue sphere eclipsing the sun high above. "Now shut up and let me handle this. Come back and talk to me when you have the balls to do whatever it takes to win, brat," J404 said as he then put his fingers together, his smile widening. "That trick you used though, I don't think I've seen such a thing for a long time. World expansion, the ability to form and make your own reality, to any extent depending on your strength and how much code or cosmic essence one possess. But really it is all about strength and power. Yes. That's fucking it.
P-O-V-E-R.
And I have plenty to spare. So take it all, you annoying bitch." J404 thought as he then began to power himself up. Malware would use approximately about 40 to 50% of his power. Outside of this mental space, 404's body would begin to take some drawbacks. His bones bubbling and decreasing in mass and strength, however it also would regenerate itself. Like as if his unconscious self was always in autopilot. Always needing to survive. I see. So his body with that code ciphering is able to take some punishment. I won't use more though, since this amount is just what I need. Hey, Jay. 404 chuckled as he then saw the blue sphere in the sky completely eclipsing everything. It's time to die. Blitz screamed. Is that right? World expansion. Nightmare Covenant. Jay. 404 shouted out, and within mere moments the entire realm of the thought space was eclipsed in this pitch blackness. That blackness would overtake all thoughts and imaginations within reality itself, and all previous variations, timelines and even memories of it. Invoking fear and despair into all who had ever thought or known this reality to be home. All who had ever dreamt, had thoughts and imagined within this reality. All of them feared now one single being, malware. All entities, people, gods and even organisms were all frozen in place. Whatever they were doing, they had stopped and were now frozen in total and unapologetic fear and terror. Blitz couldn't even move, her body twitching. Her eyes moved down to see Jay. 404 laughing to himself before looking up at her. Hee ha 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 ha. Jay. 404 laughed as spread his arms out wide. His wide grin across his face growing as he continued to laugh maniacally, and with overwhelming pleasure. Well, isn't this a shape turn of events? I'm sure you had a grandiose plan somewhere on your head. But now I'm all you're thinking about.
J. 404 Smiled.
Jay, just what are you? Blitz thought, however, Jay. 404 then spread his arms out wide before pointing his fingers at Blitz, who looked at him extremely pissed off. Now for the main dish. Bloody number. Because I'm feeling a bit generous, I figured I'll tell you how it works. You see, I'm thinking of a number. Jay. 404 said, tapping his forehead. Once you go over this number, then your body will damage itself, and I do mean your real body. And I should also note that you won't be able to break out of it until you or I die. So we have quite the bond, you and I. Jay. 404 chuckled as he then flew up to her and wrapped his arm around her shoulder. As for my next trick, I'll just let you watch. Jay. 404 smiled as he lifted up Blitz's shirt, exposing one of her breast. You bastard! Don't you dare touch me! She shouted. Jay. 404 smiled at her before he bounced it around one of his hands. He then got a wide smile on his face, his sharp teeth getting that much sharper. She watched in horror as she could do nothing, but watch malware grind his teeth together like a beast, sharpening them. He then quickly and ferociously chomped down on Blitz's breast. His teeth sunk in deep before he then let go and would sucker punched her. Jay. 404 then would fly back as he saw the bite mark sink itself into Blitz's skin. As he flew back, Jay. 404 would land on top of the side of the valley. Prepare yourself. Things are you just getting started. Jay. 404 smirked as his world expansion then began to fizzle away. Here comes the monster. Outside of the thought space, Infected and Gorg were battling still. Infected was running through the woods as Gorg chased him down, barreling and knocking down everything in his path. Infected then jumped onto a tree branch and began to place leave-behind wisp and smaller wisp bombs he'd throw deep into the snow. Infected swung and jumped further ahead. As Gorg arrived, he would step on a wisp mine which exploded right under him, nearly leveling the entire area. The other wisp Infected had left behind also attached to Gorg and exploded on him too. Infected was watching from afar, looking for only one thing. As the wisp exploded on top of Gorg, Infected then noticed a small piece, not too big, but it was a small piece of metal coming off of Gorg's body. Infected smiled wide as he then jumped back off the branch he was on and then grabbed it, swinging himself right into the heart of the destruction happening. As he did, he'd go flying onto the sky from the effects of the blast and then swallow the piece of metal. Hee ha ha ha. Guess who's got a steel stomach now, metal dash. However, that's when a metal hand would come up and grab Infected's face and pull him down, slamming him into the ground. Gorg then walked over and stomped on Infected's head. Only this time he felt his foot sink in. Gorg lifted his foot and saw a head-shaped dent in his foot. He looked down and saw Infected made out of the same marshal he was. Null, watching afar, noticed it. Resourceful. He said that's when an alarm went off in his laboratory. He then showed another feed recording and saw it showing D+, Alpha and Killer.jpg breaking into the facility. Now there's another problem. Null said. The giants then walked behind him and looked down to him. Bring them to me, dead or alive. Neither matters to me. Null said as the giants then marched past him and up towards the facility main level. Null then looked up at his magnum opus. Calculated heaven. He stared at it and lifted his hand up. Soon, my son. Soon I will pay for the mistake I made all those years ago. I promise. Null said. Null then sent out a signal to Mecha 404. Mecha 404 turned and looked towards the facility. Mecha targets have entered the facility. Aid my giants in getting rid of them. Null said. Mecha 404 then charged his rockets. Attending immediate termination request. Mecha 404 said as he then flew off and towards the facility. Up above in the higher levels of the facility, D+ would be walking around the place with Alpha and Killer.jpg. Wow, they built all this to kill 404? Where's the team? Killer asked. D+ then picked up a skull piece of Abyss. Sans. I think I have a good idea. D+ said. Alpha walked over and took a look. Killer kicked around some of the junk and chairs. This place is a complete shithole. Stalker alert. Killer said. Alpha then expanded his senses and could sense error way down deep inside the facility. This place has to be probably on my #1 list of creepiest places I've ever been. Minus hell itself. Killer said. Oh yeah. Would the first be that freak 404's hideout? D+ said. Alpha then turned around and looked at them. Wait, you work with 404? The Killer? Alpha asked. Not by my own free will, but dash. But nothing, that monster is on my list of creeps to get rid of. So unless you're about to tell me that you are being used as a slave, you best prepare yourself. Alpha said as he started walking towards Killer before D+ got between them. Hey, not the time, guys. We're here for other business. Not this, but Ghost Boy. D+ said as he turned to Alpha and cracked his knuckles. If you're looking for a rough time, I'm your guy. D+ said. Alpha's eyes looked at D+. You don't want to try me, pal. Alpha said. The two looked at each other with Killer standing behind watching. That's when suddenly something would come through the ceiling behind them. They all shelled their eyes as debris and smoke. D+ looked and saw Mecha 404 standing in the smoke. Whoa, a robot. Alpha said. However, they had no time to react as Mecha 404 would blitz towards them and attempt to attack D+, only for Alpha to grab him by the leg and swing Mecha 404 down the hallway. D+ and Killer watched as Alpha then summoned his blaster and fired it with Mecha 404 firing his arm beams at causing a massive collision that nearly leveled the entire floor. The explosion sent D+ and Killer through the ground and to fall against the ground several levels below. Alpha looked back at them and then to Mecha 404 who reformed his arms back into arms. He then turned one of them into a blade made out of light. Alpha tilted his head at the sudden new weapon. Alright then, I can tango with this. Alpha said. D+ and Killer coughed as they got up, both struggling to stand up. They both dusted themselves off as D+ then turned around to the hallway behind them. Alright, we need to find error, said Killer. Whoa. I think taking care of this scientist guy is more important than wasting time on finding the crybaby. D+ said. That's right. Let's go crack some skulls open, shall we? D said. D+ shooed away as Killer looked around. I'm just saying if we stick together, we can handle both problems at the same time. Since when did you care about taking care of the lab geek? Killer asked. Since I decided not to be tethered to anyone anymore. This constant desire to be something I may not be. I don't know, something is just pulling me to do this. D+ said. Killer walked over to him and put a hand on his shoulder. Look man, we're a team, okay? Maybe a bit unconventional at times, but we are one. So long as we stick together, we got this. Let's let nothing separate us. Killer said. D+ smirked a bit before suddenly a massive hand would come crashing between them from the bottom floor. The two jumped back, as they saw a massive giant-like creature come out of the ground. He then heard heavy footsteps coming from around the corner behind them down the hall. D+ watched it and then looked to Killer. Go. I got this.
D+ shooted.
But dash. Go. D+ shouted. Killer didn't wait and started running in search of error. The two giants approaching D+. "All right, fellas. Let's see what you got," D+ said. "Beast of Judgment." Killer ran through the facility as he searched for error. Each cell he went past being someone different. That's when he saw a Sans with a leather jacket and shorts in a cell. He had a strange colored spiky mohawk and was wearing shades. "Hey bros. Mind giving old Shaggy here a hand?" said the skeleton. Killer ignored him and kept moving. Come on. Don't leave a rock star hanging," shouted the guy. Killer kept moving as he searched around until he finally found Error's cell, which he was in. Error was sitting down. His eyes closed.
Yo, error.
"You all right?" Killer asked. Error's eyes opened and looked at him. He got up and walked over. "Glad to see a familiar face. Where is 404? Error asked. "Somewhere. But right now we need to get you out of here," Killer said. He then gestured for Error to stand back as he then got out of his knife and cut the cell in half with it. Error then jumped put and stretched his body. "Any reason you couldn't do that before?" Killer asked. "The cell from the inside. It seems whoever made it had code dampers. Prevented outcodes from using their abilities. A really nice invention. Definitely need to add that effect to my strings." Error said. "Yeah, we can do that sort of thing later. For now we need to find the B-Man," Killer said. Just as they were getting ready to escape, they would then see several other Mecha 404s come running down the hallway. However, they didn't look nearly as advanced as the final one. "More of them," Killer said. "Seem like prototypes." Error said. That's when one of them with a start of large charger backpack would fire a giant cannon-like beam glowing white and black. Error would hold his hand out, blocking it with nothing but sheer will and pressure. The attack seemed to erase particles and even small fragments of the area around them. Some of it got on Killer's pinky finger and erased a small piece. That's when the beam would finish, steam coming from then machine's head. "Holy fuck. Did that shit just erase a piece of me?" Killer said, a bit freaked out. "An eraser cannon? That's defiantly new," Error said. "How did you know that trick of yours would work?" Killer asked. Error coughed as he kept staring forward. That's when Killer realized. Now is not the time to improv, dude. We could have died. Killer shouted. Error shrugged. "I had it under control," Error said. The other two prototypes then got beam swords that appeared from their palms. Killer looked to Error. "Focus on getting to 404, Killer said. Error nodded as he then immediately teleported away, with Killer getting eye at his knives and smirking as he looked at the prototypes. "Let's dance, pals." Killer smiled as he got ready to fight. Error teleported above the facility. There he would see Infected juggling the head of Gorg in his hand. "Hee ha ha ha." Infected laughed, phased when he turned to see Error. He smiled at him and waved his hand. Error didn't wave, but then saw 404 still body along with Blitz's. "Sir," Error shouted as he then teleported over and went to 404's body. He looked to Infected. "What happened?" Error asked. "A hell if I know. I just know I killed the Iron Giant, hee. Get it? You wouldn't get it. You're not made of iron." Infected smiled, his grin a bit disturbing to Error. That's when he'd look at 404. "Come on, Will. Something tells me shit's about to go down and we could really use your crazy mumbo-jumbo," Error said. Deep within the facility, however, Null would begin to set his plan in motion. Battle of the Beast. For 04D+, Error and Killer.jpg all looked in horror at Infected would growled at them, yet his growls sounded like chuckles and laughter. Everything was delving into madness. The world could be heard screaming and shouting for their downfall. D+ looked around as he heard the sounds of everyone cheering. The audience was enthusiastic and ready to see these villains die gruesome deaths. "This isn't good," Killer.jpg said. "Yeah, well, he clearly isn't in his best mind. I don't know what exactly that guy did, but I bet if we dash." However, in that short moment between blinking, D+ saw Infected punch straight through Killer.jpg's skull, with everyone unable to even think of reacting. For then acted quickly after as he then pointed his finger at Infected and fired a God Ray, only for Infected to already be in front of him, using his own hand to cover 404's finger, causing for him to get hit with the paralysis effect from his own attack. D+ immediately attempted to attack after that, but Infected's fist would already be at his face. However, that's when Infected noticed it was covered in strings by Error, who was holding his arm back. He looked back at Error only to get his jaw smacked by D+'s fist, which sent him flying into the air. That's when Error would attempt to slam him to the ground, only for Infected land on his feet and jerk Error towards him. Infected delivered an intense gut punch, causing Error to cough out blood. But Infected would put his hand over his mouth, holding the blood in. "Nu, don't let any of it go to waste. I want to spill every drop of your blood at once." Infected gained before he then uppercut Error, and as he flew up, he would quickly grab Error's leg and the slam net him against the ground. D+ fired his blaster, which nearly sent Infected falling over. D+ kept firing them one after another, pinning him down. Infected was slowly powering through each of the blast. D+'s eyes looked back at Killer. "If you have a plan, Error, do it now."
Des plus shooted.
Error groaned as cracks in his skull leaked blood, along with him spitting out a wad of blood. Infected kept walking towards D+, who continued to fire more and more blast as him. "If you don't use it, then you'll die for sure. So what if a little madness gets added to the mix? That why you did this in the first place? To take on the madness the others didn't know they would get," said D behind D+. D+'s expression grew darker in anger and frustration, the feeling DT running through his veins. He could feel it burning him up on the inside. Meanwhile, Null looked up at calculated heaven. He witnessed as it continued to take in all of the hopes and dreams of every single person in Reality 6. All their hopes and dreams to see 404 and these monsters be put to an end. With the fact that code is everywhere and behaves as it is premeditated to, things go as intended, then we could be looking at Tree being born that will be able to run perfect worlds, ones that have endings that will never result in things like me ever having to happen again. Null said as he then looked back at them. He saw as Infected powered through D+'s blasters, and threw a devastating punch to D+'s face, sending him flying back and sliding against the ground. D+ struggled to get up as he wiped his bloody nose. Infected chuckled as he kept walking over to him, but then he'd stop, catching Null for 04 Error and D+ by surprise. "August! Grr! Ah!" Infected shouted as he grabbed his head. Is he fighting a Jason Maleware's will? Just what kind of beast is this guy? 404 thought as he got up. D+ also stood up. Impressive resistance. Rejecting Maleware is something not even poor 404 over here can do. However, let's see just how well you can keep that. Every person is like a panel of nodes and dials. If I pressed or turned one thing, set of the entire game will change. Null said. Pain. 404 and Error arrive in Waterfall, where carnage everywhere was seen. Death plenty and dust filling the air. Error looked around. Flashes of his own past here came back at him. The screams, the tears and the isolation he left these people in. Yet 404 didn't even bat an eye and kept moving, following the dust to wherever it led. 404's eyes were sharp and focused. Error followed behind him. I haven't seen him like this. It's like he's a whole other person. His determination. If it was showing, he'd be unstoppable. Error thought as he followed behind him. 404's eyes darted around as he kept walking past everyone until he arrived at where Infected was. Infected groaned as he struggled to get up. Null then got ready to boost Infected and Maleware, but that's when he saw his hands flash from black to his bony ones. No, I'm running out of time. The Null code. I'm not. What is? Why is it rejecting me now? Null thought. He looked up towards calculated heaven. It was nearly finished and everyone was still watching 404. Error and D+. Damn it, I need more of their hopes and dreams. They need to despise them more and want a better future. It's time then. No more games. Null thought as he then waved his arm, restoring Infected back to full strength. 404 walked over and grabbed Infected by the shoulder. Right as he got to lifting Infected up, Infected would then suddenly rip 404's arm off with one hand. 404 and Error were left stunned. Sir. Error shouted as he then extended his strings to catch Infected, but the guy was jumping and sprinting around too fast for him to catch. Infected blitzed behind Error, his arm raised and ready to stab his arm straight through. 404 looked back at the last second, but that's when he saw D+ there in the way. He had stopped the attack by jumping in front of D+, and shoving his hand right into his mouth. Infected was frozen. The fear of the pain that would be caused from him biting down again frightened him immensely. Come on, you beast. Why don't you just do it, huh? Piece of shit. Do it. D+ shouted, yet Infected didn't. That's when D+ turned to 404 and Error. Go hurry. Think up some kind of goddamn plan already. D+ shouted. Error then teleported away with 404 quickly following. D+ then looked at Infected, who was staring at him. A low growl in his voice. Here, a Christmas present. D+ said as he then used his speed to jerk his hand quick enough, breaking it inside Infected's mouth. Blood spurted out and inside. Infected howled as he fell back onto his back. He irked and groaned in pain. Black shocks of lightning erupting from every hole in his face. D+ was sweating, pale. He walked back a few paces before falling back against a nearby wall. Why am I suddenly so weak now? D+ said as he looked at Infected. Error and 404 appeared at the entrance of Hotland. 404 got himself a new arm from the code around the O. He tested it a bit before he started walking away again. Hey, we need a plan, damn it. Stop walking away. Error said, but 404 wasn't listening. I said enough. Error shouted as he then wrapped 404's arm in strings, stopping him from moving. 404 looked at the strings and then him. Release me. 404 demanded. Not until you tell me why the hell you've gone all money brain right now. You really going to let this guy get to you? What the hell? When did you get so soft? Error said. I said let go of me, Error. 404 demanded again, his tone much more stern. No. Error said. You think you have some say over me? You think I give a rat's ass about you, boy? Don't try to play me like a some fiddle, okay? You don't know me. You don't even relate to me. So stop speaking to me like you honestly know a damn thing. Unless you want to be left behind again like I did last time. 404 said. Error just looked at him. Both of their eyes focused on one another. You think you're scary, but you're not. You don't scare me. Error said. 404 got in Error's face. You should be. 404 said with a cold voice. No, I shouldn't, and you know why. 'Cause I got too much fucking respect for you. Error shouted. 404 just stared at him. That's why I waited. That's why I knew you'd come and get me out of that damn facility, and that's why I'm here now. So don't stand there and pretend like I don't KNKW anything. 'Cause I do know you. I know you. Error said, pushing 404 back. The two glitched for a moment, before they normalized. 404 looked down at the ground while Error just stared at him with a pained look. The two stood in silence. I'm tired of seeing you let people hang your life over your head. You made that choice. You're here now still making choices. We all may not have fans when it comes to our goals, but you should never let someone judge you for it. Never. Error said. 404 looked at him. He looked at his hand. He remembered seeing Player once hold it. It's your life, William, please do something with it. Player said in his mind. 404 closed his eyes before dropping his arms to his side. You're right, I've been letting what I did get to me. I've been letting my choices weigh on me. And maybe they should, but they should never stop me. 404 said. Error nodded. He then released his strings from 404's arm. 404 smiled and looked at Error. Thank you. 404 said. Don't be such a candy ass. I was just Dash. Jesus G, just take the compliment. For once you made sense. 404 said. Error preemptively smirked as he nodded. He folded his arms. Okay, you're welcome. Error said. 404 and Error stood side by side with each other. Error then saw the destruction of Underswap in the distance. Waterfall was being datoried again. Looks like Infected had regained his strength. He's up again, and I don't think D+ is going to save our asset again. Error said. You're right, but I think I got a plan. 404 said. Yeah? Like what? Error asked. That's when 404 summoned his soul in his hand. Did you see what happened to Sans when he fused with those human souls? 404 asked. Error took a second to process before he then got struck with the answer. Oh, will that even work? I mean, we've never even Dash. Doesn't matter. Anything is better than dying by some mad scientist. 404 said. Error looked at him and nodded with a smile before bringing forth his own soul. Yeah, you're right. Error said. The destroyer of data years is born. Infected was rampaging throughout Underswap, tearing apart people and buildings everywhere. Everyone was in a panic. Null watched everyone down there. He saw the screens of all the people watching the carnage and chaos. D+ was passed out on the ground. That's when Alpha and Mecha 404 would crash onto the scene. Mecha 404 aimed his arm cannon at Alpha, who then kicked it out of the way. He would summon his sword right inside the cannon, causing it to explode in their face. Mecha 404 swiped the dust away before Alpha then came down from and sliced his arm in two. Subject showing sword skills. Adapting. Utilizing. Said Mecha 404. Alpha then roared as he got ready to swing his sword at Mecha 404, only for the robot to reveal a plasma sword from its palm. The two clashed. Alpha in shock at Mecha 404's mimicking skills. Alpha swung his sword at Mecha 404 expertly, but each swing was met with the same from Mecha. He was perfectly matching how Alpha fought. He's matching moves. How did he already get down my techniques? Alpha thought. The two continued to brawl until finally Alpha had an idea. Just when Mecha 404 went for a swing, it'd go right through Alpha like he was made of smoke, to which then Alpha would swing his sword through Mecha 404. Yet it had no outer effect on his body, but tore through his circuits and wires. Mecha 404 backed away, but it slowly began to shut down rapidly due to the damage Alpha had caused. Core wiring damaged, seeking and signaling for assistance. Cease. And Mecha 404 shut down and collapsed onto its back. Alpha coughed as he stared at it for a moment. Alpha undid his sword, returning it back to its own dimension. He then flew up and looked around before his eyes laid on the encompassing mightiness that is calculated heaven. This weird and strange spherical-like structure, which also somehow felt alive and also present in his mind, lingered beyond a veil. It was mesmerizing. D+ back in waterfall slowly began to open his eyes. He then began to struggle to stand up. His breaths were short. With that he then looked up. A humming could be heard. It was from calculated heaven. Am I dreaming? Or are you? Said a omnipresent voice. It was alien, yet nostalgic. Sounding like familiar voices, yet also ones never before heard. It was gentle yet had a icy cold fear to how it was delivered. What the fuck was that? D+ thought. I don't know, but whatever the fuck it was, I don't like it one goddamn bit. D said. Infected roared loudly as then Swap. Alphys ran over with her spear, Papyrus joining her. Just what the hell is that thing? It looks like Sans. Said Swap. Perus. I don't know, but he's dangerous. He's been killing everyone in sight. I had the dogs go after him, but... Swap. Alphys' head dropped down a bit. Swap. Perus looked at her, his face dropping a bit too. He put a hand on her shoulder as he walked forward. Hey, come on. We faced other KZs like this one before. No need to worry. Said Swap. Papyrus. Wait. You don't have to do this, just go and make sure Sans is dash. Sorry, Al, can't do that. Everything somehow is just telling me I need to be here no matter the reasons. I have to run away. Swap. Papyrus said. Swap. Alpha stared at him. I can't afford not to care anymore. Said Swap. Papyrus. Swap. Alpha smirked, shaking her head. The two of them then looked forward at Infected, who bit off the head of another monster. The dust rushing through the wind as the monster died. Its last thoughts filled with fear. The Datayer who knows no good, and has no heart. Error 666 looked up into the air looking for Infected. However, that's when Alpha would slam to the ground behind him. Error 666 stared deeply into the void above. He took a deep breath. Oh sweet God. Finally. I'm here. Ah-ha-ha-ha-ha. Laughed Error 666 with a mighty thump ringing from his chest as he pounced it. Alpha just stared at him, hate in his eyes. Oh, how I've dreamed of this very moment. Or better to say, how I can envision my dreams of this moment. 'Cause yak now I didn't exist till now. Oh, the wonders of the multiverse will never cease to amaze me. Error 666 said to himself as he continued to talk to himself while Alpha watched with utter disgust. Fucking schizophrenic. Alpha mumbled before he started walking towards E666. Error 666 was still talking to himself as Alpha approached. Hey, do you know just how many lives you've just ruined or destroyed? Those people had just as much of a right to life as you do. So why rob them of that? Huh? Answer me. Alpha shouted. I have 5 seconds of being alive. Error 666 said. Alpha looked at him a bit confused. What? Alpha said. Error 666 slightly turned his head to Alpha. Not even 5 seconds and I have fly buzzing in my ear. Error 666 said with a low tone. Alpha took one step back. It was incredible. He didn't know what exactly 404 in Error had done. But this mysterious new warrior was somehow even greater than 404 was when they first fought. Error 666 just stared at him with an unamused face, like as if Alpha was legitimately bothering him. Is that all you dash? Someone help please, shouted a voice behind them. Alpha and Error 666 looked to see Swap. Alphys carrying a badly wounded Swap. Undyne. Someone. Please, shouted Swap. Alphys. Error 666's eyes went to Alpha and noticed his want to help them. E666 then smirked widely. Alpha immediately went to reach for them. You're alive. Thank goodness, shouted Error 666 with a voice of worry and joy. Alpha looked back at him confused. Swap. Alphys stared at him. Error 666 smiled widely. A face of sincerity painted him. Don't worry, I've taken care of the threat. But hurry if you want to save her. You'll need to come to me now. Error 666 said. I dash. Bullshit. Don't believe a word he says. He's with them. Those destroyers. Alpha shouted to her. If I was a destroyer, do you think I'd standing here and offering you aid? Come on. Don't believe this lost spirit. He doesn't know the first thing about pain. But we do. Error 666 said. You son of dash. I get it. You loved her, right? She meant more to you than anything else in the whole world. Error 666 said. Swap. Alphys stared at him with a face of realization and sorrow. Alpha was in shock at what he was saying. You would have done, and will do anything to save her, right? There's nothing wrong with that mindset. We all have those we die. Kill to protect. You see? I understand. Error 666 said, to which Swap. Alphys began to cry as she walked over to him holding Undyne. Yes. Oh God, yes. Please save her. Swap. Alphys said. Alpha was in complete disbelief at what was happening. Swap. Alphys dropped to her knees as she looked up at Error 666, who looked down at her. Everyone from every multiverse was still watching what was happening, including Null, who was in more control now than before, yet the code still was dispersing. Error 666 took a knee and looked down at Swap. Undyne. Her stomach was torn open badly, barely being kept open with some medical supplies and stitching. Such hard work, such care. I think I would have done the same for my love once upon a time. But that time is over. Error 666 smiled as he then extended his hand and touched Swap. Alphys' face. You did a good thing rescuing her, aiding her and even carrying her all the way here to me. You're such a good person. Error 666 said. He smiled at her, and she gave him a weak smile back. Error 666 then remembered what Null had said to 404, and his goals. He then looked at her with a face of joy, but behind it was clear resentment and anger. I'm so fucking happy for you. Error 666 said. Alpha's eyes widened and he went to move in, but it was too late. Code mutation. Error 666 said, and just like that, turned Swap. Alphys into an amalgamation in front of literally everyone's eyes. Alpha's face went from shock to frustration and agony, while Error 666 smiled and wore a face of ecstasy and pleasure. God, that felt good. Error 666 chuckled. Everyone was in shock of the cruelty displayed, the utter disregard and lack of sympathy. What everyone just witnessed was a monster. Kill or be killed. What else is there? Error 666 took a deep breath of relief as he spread his arms out. God, that felt just right. Error 666 smiled while Alpha was petrified in disbelief and disgust. Everyone from every multiverse looked in horror at what had just happened. Even Null was surprised. Everyone, but the monster they all saw. Who in this moment was laughing? A laugh that everyone would remember for as long as this reality continued to exist. Alpha's anger began to boil. It was like looking right at 404 all over again. A being so void of empathy and sympathy that it was almost uncanny to exist together. You selfish bastard. Alpha shouted. Error 666 smirked as he looked at him. Come on now, you say that with such a surprise on your face. Error 666 said as he stared at Alpha with a wide smug look across his face. Alpha immediately summoned his blade and got right to attacking Error 666, who dodged each attack. Eventually he'd stop dodging and stare at Null. He's not going to let this end so quickly. Better hope I'm right about you. Just like you were right about 404. Error 666 said as he stood still as Alpha went ahead and went for a downward slice. Stop, said Null, which then Alpha halted all momentum. His face conflicted as his eyes looked to Null as well. Kill him if you wish, but only on my own cue. Null said. What? Alpha said. Null then brought up a large holographic screen. I want you to hear their words, to hear their pain. These people, even though may not have dropped a bit of sweat to save a world, may never have dropped a hint to their involvement or even saved an entire universe. However, they are still part of the multiverse. This is still their home. They have a right to speak on its behalf and what they think is best for it or not. On who doesn't and does deserve to exist with them. Null said. Error 666 looked as the first face that came up was a Ascary's face. Error 404, I've seen what this kind man has shown us, and personally, I believe that you may just need a cup of tea and a nice chat. I know what it's like to commit a horrible deed or deeds and believe that it was either my way or the highway. But I truly believe that you're just a troubled soul. So maybe, just maybe, if you truly try, you can be a good person again someday. Said the Ascary. Null then turned it to another person's face. This time it was a Undyne. There's protecting what you've lost, and then there's being no better than the ones who you lost it to. I want to feel bad for you. But really? Finale P1. What is this? Alpha immediately off jump flew right in towards Error 666 and Fun Frisk. However Fun. Frisk's eyes would glow a brief bright yellow like a flash of light. Suddenly a massive piece of the multiverse above would come crashing right down on top of him. Error 666 took notice of this and slightly turned his head to Fun Frisk, who was smiling at what had happened. She then noticed Error 666 staring at her. So that's it. Now the name makes sense. Error 666 said. Fun Frisk looked at him with a curious face. Huh? What do you mean? Fun Frisk asked in a childish and fun tone. The only thing more dangerous than LV, maybe even DT. FL. Fun level, the ability to have control over rare events, or even to control how or when something happens. Now usually that's not an ability, and is mainly something stories or much less these universes run. Yet somehow, you are able to do that outside of a universe. Outside of a story. How bizarre. Error 666 said. Fun. Frisk's face got a little more serious but still wore a smile. That's some great observation you have there. Is that 404? Or is that just you? She asked. Just me, babe. Error 666 answered. Fun. Frisk chuckled as Alpha then came bursting out of the rubble roaring, and then would go flying at Error 666, who turned to him. Alpha went in and cut straight through Error 666, his expression of shock as he was cut in half. Fool. You show dash. However, as Alpha was talking, the two halves of Error 666 immediately turned into yellow strings. What? Alpha shouted as then those yellow strings wrapped around him and electrocuted him. He grunted loudly as the high voltage went not only through his being, but was striking his very existence. Did you really think I'd make it that easy for you? Please, for Ophir was going easy on you before. Now me though? Heh, I don't mind humiliating a nobody. Error 666 said as the yellow strings then lifted Alpha into the air before next slamming him down. Alpha cut through the strings, freeing himself. That's when shadows would appear all over the ground. Alpha looked down before he then looked up along with Fun Frisk. Oh my gosh. Fun Frisk said with joy as her and Alpha both looked up to see a whole sky full of Gaster Blaster. But Thu Wheat pointed down. Instead they were flying around the entire place like moving clouds. Alpha was in shock at the sight until he then heard Error 666 land a few feet behind him. "You like that? Then you'll love what I have planned for you," Error 666 said. "All of you errors talk much," Alpha shouted as he flew over to Error 666 and went for a downward slash. Error 666 then extended his hands with his fingers tips shooting out a gray sort of string, slamming his hands together before then putting his hands up, his strings now acting like a sort of shield to which would block Alpha's attack. Alpha grunted as he kept on going, trying to break through Error 666's defense. "Goodness, you look so desperate. No need to do all of that, relax a bit, man," Error 666 said as then from above, one of the many gaster glasters in the sky began to fly around dropping red strings all over the place. Others began to do the same. Everyone across the land and even the multiverse would bear witness to it. Alpha looked at the strings fall on him. "I'm guessing we're not going to have a very meaningful conversation," Error 666 said. Alpha's teeth would grind as he then jumped back, only to pursue Error 666 at high speeds, him making jabs and stabs for him, yet Error 666 dodged each attack all the same. One for his head. He used his strings as a shield again and parried the attack. An attack to his legs would see Error 666 swing over Alpha and land behind him. Alpha would swing his sword backwards only for Error 666 to grab the blade with his hand. Alpha then began to heat up the blade, DT on it pretty much radiating. Yet nothing happened to Error 666. That's when Alpha noticed his hand was covered in red strings. Finale P2. What the fuck is that thing? Alpha collapsed onto the ground coughing. He tried summoning his blade, but it wouldn't come out. He had been beaten too severely. Alpha looked up and saw they were in a datoried building. Alpha struggled to keep up while Error 666 floated down slowly. "Well, look at this. You managed to do more damage to building with your body than you have with your fist to my face. I'd applaud you, but the effort to do so would take more energy than I've spent fighting you," Error 666 said. "To be honest, actually, this has been a complete waste of your time. Every punch you throw and every attack you dish out to me is all in vain. That Frisk was right. You are merely a side character when compared to my power," Error 666 said. Alpha attempted to get up, but Error 666 would simply put his foot on his back, keeping him down. No, you should stay down. There's nothing more you can do," Error 666 said. Alpha slowly began to realize it, the truth hitting him like a bullet train to a simple car. This man, he was right. There really wasn't anything he could do to stop him. He really was just in the way. Error 666 smirked as he down at Alpha. "Stay down, it's where the weak belong. Why do you think you died? Because you were too weak to save anyone. Depending on you is worse than suicide. And that's saying something, cause at least with suicide it offers people a quick death. What are you offering these people? All these sorry saps who all want my death, yet are too pussy to do anything about it themselves. All you offer them is a pitiful show when you try. You couldn't stop 404, you couldn't stop your own death from happening. So what in the end of God himself, well me I guess, do you think you can do against me?" Error 666 said. Alpha just remained there, on the ground, his mind fully shattering with every word. "Don't be sad, at least you can blend in with the rest of the garbage of this world," Error 666 said as he removed his foot and walked away a bit. He then turned around and spoke to Alpha one last time. Finale P3 just like old times. For 04 was just staring at Subject 0 who also looked to him too. "Hey, we need to fuse again. Otherwise this guy is going to mop the floor with us dash." But as Error was finishing his sentence would see himself flung into the air as a result of Subject 0 blitzing past him in 404. 404 quickly regained himself and turned to Subject 0 firing a blaster at him. Yet Subject 0 simply pressed try again casuing for 404 to repeat the action again. However this time Subject 0 would be above him this time. 404 noticed yet couldn't react fast enough casuing for him to get his face slammed into the ground. The shockwaves of the impact destroying nearby universes in the millions. 404 coughed up blood only for Subject 0 to cover his mouth and hold 404 down, his other hand on the try again button. "I have waited for this moment for longer before you knew how to piss William. said Subject Zero as the head that he was carrying hovered over 404's head as it began to drain his mind. 404's muffled screams being heard. Suddenly Error teleported next to Subject Zero's head and pointed his finger at its head like a gun. "Take this freak. God Ray!" shouted Error. However, instead of a beam, sparks would go flying all over the place until suddenly Error's arm would get blown off, causing for an explosion, which knocked Subject Zero away and caused 404 to go rolling. Error fell onto his back, screaming for a brief moment before he held in the pain, breathing shakily. Damn it, I'm still not strong enough. Don't tell me that old man really meant what he said about knowing the technique before using it. God, I hate him, Error thought. He then turned and looked over to 404, who also looked to him still on the ground. 404 then reached out to Error with Blue Mastery, but just at that moment Subject Zero would teleport over and stomp on 404's head. "Oh, I don't think so," Subject Zero said, yet he was too late. He then quickly noticed as 404's body turned a darker shade. His head then moved to look at Subject Zero. Hee. Too late. Error 666 said, in which he would then turn into yellow strings, all of them flying up in Subject Zero's face before zapping him with enough energy to fuel billions of multiverses. Subject Zero let out a distorted and glitchy scream. During it, it would look at the head it carried with him. It took notice of the slight fragments it had gathered from 404. "So be it. It's enough," said Subject Zero. It then absorbed what it had collected from 404, and with one large blip, everything went silent. Error 666, who was standing in the distance, watched surprised. He noticed his yellow strings fly past him. He then turned back as a large white blinding light began to occur where Subject Zero stood. "What?" Error 666 said. Meanwhile, Alpha and Fun Frisk in the distance watched with bated breath. "This is such a spectacle. However, I can't stand by as my lord gets eviscerated." "Fun," Frisk said as her eyes would then glow briefly. In that moment the sounds of lightning would begin to be heard all around. Error 666 looked around and saw the small sparks. "It can't be," he thought. And as the bright beam of light got brighter and brighter, suddenly a large lightning bolt would come shooting down right atop it, shaking the entire place. Error 666 fell to one knee from the shockwave, with Alpha also looking in shock, with Fun Frisk having a wide smile. "Spice to the mixture," she thought. Once the light and bolts of stray lightning cleared out, come the man himself, Ares. Error 666 thought as he watched as Omni walked out of the middle of the lightning and light, his red cape flowing as the shockwave still flew outward in every direction. "Of course you're behind this," Omni said. However, as he said that, he noticed how different Error 666 was from 404. He then turned a little confused. Could have sworn I felt William," Omni thought. "Well, look who it is. If it isn't the man himself, the hero," Error 666 said. Omni didn't react to the comment and just looked around. "I'll take it you aren't entirely responsible for this?" Omni asked. "Well, no, you're definitely right. Although 404 is most definitely the root of all of this," Error 666 said. Omni looked at him. "Are you not him?" he asked. Error 666 chuckled as he looked Omni. "You're funny, hell no. As if I'd want to be when I have such a baddie waiting for me." Error 666 smirked as he answered. "So what are you then?" Omni asked. Think of me as a new man, someone given a chance through the process of two beings bringing me together," Error 666 said. Omni just stated at him. "Do I need to be worried?" Omni asked. "I'd be insulated if you weren't." He ha. Error 666 laughed. "Fun." Frisk smiling as she watched. Alpha then flew over and landed near them. "Well, look who's joined the party," Error 666 said. Alpha just ignored him. "Who are you?" Alpha asked Omni. Error 666 got annoyed with that and raises his finger. "Hey, you can be killing whoever you want. Fuck whoever you want, but you better never ignore me," Error 666 shouted, annoyed. Omni crossed his arms and side-eyed Error 666. "No, be definitely as will," Omni said. That's when the pillar of light emerged once again. This time with Subject Zero finally emerging from it. This time a more refined form. Subject Zero walked forward, One long black skeleton hand coming from his back. This feels familiar. Such a reunion, such a moment. Such a time to be alive. Now I will enact my purpose. Your minds are mine. Subject 0 announced.
Finale P4. P e a K.
All of them were staring the other down. Your minds, hand them over. Said Subject 0. Not a chance, Tinkerbell. Said Error 666. You need to evacuate from this world now or you can die, creature. Omni said. Yoo-hoo. Oh my sweet goaty poo. Called out Fun Frisk, getting everyone's attention. Why are you still here? Shouted Alpha. Be quiet, sighed Pint. I'm talking to God here. 404. Shouted Fun Frisk. Error 666 groaned slightly as he turned his head away for a moment. Ugh. If she wasn't bad then, I definitely would have nuked her for being annoying. Then again there is her whole fun thing. Error 666 thought to himself as he then turned to her. What? Error 666 said, slightly annoyed. Subject 0 just looked between the two, confused at the sudden fact he was being ignored. Don't you die. Remember we had a deal. If I helped you, you'd make me queen of the multiverse. The goddess of it all. Fun Frisk said. I don't remember that being the exact words of our discussion. Error 666 said as he scratched his head. Then you need to get your ears cleaned. Shouted Fun Frisk. They are clean. Error 666 shouted. How can they be clean if you have none? Omni commented. Error 666 made a gauging noise as he shrugged. Does it really matter? I can hear you, that's what counts. Error 666 said. Omni rolled his eyes and then looked to Subject 0, who had a stress mark upon his head. The audacity, after all I've done to get here and reach these fools. And I'm playing second fiddle to some tramp and her playboy. That's it. Time to finish this. Subject 0 thought as he then raised his black arm. They all immediately looked at him. That's enough games from the likes of you. I've come for one thing and one thing only. Now I won't be sidetracked by you or your female compatriot. However, they are more than welcome to watch you die. Subject 0 said. Now die. Subject 0 said as he then fired multiple black orbs from the ground. Omni then got ready and looked at Error 666. I'm going to take care of that giant orb above us. You two worry about him. Omni said as he then vanished from sight. Error 666 then looked at one of the orbs and saw as it spawned a black hand and immediately went to dodge it. However, unbeknownst to him, he would get hit anyway. Error 666 coughed up a few spurts of blood during the hit. Alpha turned around with shock on his face. What? It works just like before. Alpha shouted. Yes, even these external hands of mine have the same properties as my try again button. Subject 0 said with a wide smirk. Alpha then saw as 3 hands got ready to attack him, but he would block them with his blade. However, when he did, they'd once again use the properties of try again to hit Alpha once again. Yet they'd still miss due to Alpha being a ghost. To which Subject 0 would notice. What? He thought. The hand from before would slam Error 666 repeatedly, while Error 666 thought to himself, this try again button is pretty damn good. Error 666 thought as Error 666 would then get thrown by the black hand and towards another. I guess I should do the same thing. Error 666 said as he wiped his mouth of blood. He then would dodge the grab from the black hand, and as expected it would use try again to grab him. However, then Error 666's eyes would glow a deep blue before he then would separate himself from the current timeliness where he would be caught by the hand, jumped around every scenario where the try again effect should realistically be able to grab him and dodge it too, until finally he'd land behind it, and use silver strings to slice the black hand in half. He'd then use both hands to dice the hand into multiple pieces. Subject 0 looked in total surprise. That's not possible. How could you possibly dodge that? Subject 0 shouted. I saw what you did and I can't lie, I had to add that to my arsenal. Say hello to my echo attack. He works just like your try again, but yak now. Actually works. Error 666 said. Subject 0 would then dodge Alpha's attack with his blade. His black hand now adapting to his ghost state and grabbing him by the throat. HMP dodge this. Subject 0 said as several hundred black orbs around him. Each one immediately went to attack him, but Error 666 would use his new echo ability. The hands all moved to every spot that Error 666 could logically dodge to. However, Error 666 would instead manage to work around even that by placing his intentions separate from where he actually was going. This caused the black hands to go spastic as Error 666 began to use his silver strings to cut through them. One of them went to grab at him, but would be stopped by silver strings that were already wrapped around it. Another two would attempt to slam together squash Error 666, but he would simply flip out of it and fire two God rays, freezing them. He'd then kick against another, jump into the hands of another, but not before he completely covered his body in silver strings, and would spin straight through the black hand, leaving a large mark in the shape of his own body. As he spun out of the strings, he'd then reveal in his hand the other end of a red string, the other end being attached to another hand that was in the center of the clump of them. Boom baby! Error 666 smirked as he then pulled on the string, and like a big bang, it would then detonate the hand like a firework, and with that the others would also be datoried. Error 666 would slide across the ground. He'd smile at his display before he would then get grabbed from behind by Subject Zero before throwing him to the ground. He then smashed his hands on both sides of Error 666's head. "You're mine! Will be mine!" shouted Subject Zero as he began to drain Error 666's mind. Error 666 immediately punched Subject Zero in the jaw. However, his strength was beginning to become overwhelming. During this, Omni flew on top of calculated heaven, landing on its surface. He walked around and could feel the power from it. This thing is emitting enough raw power to nuke this entire reality 100 times over. Is this simply from the people in here? Omni said as he then saw as something crashed in front of him. Omni stared it down as it then would be revealed to be Mecha. 404. He stared at him unimpressed at his entrance. Mecha. 404 then immediately began to absorb some of the energy from calculated heaven. Omni saw this and immediately blitzed at Mecha. 404 obliterated him. Omni skid across the surface and turned around to see the pieces then retract and form a more evolved and durable version of Mecha. 404, which now would be called Neo Mecha. 404. Omni sighed as he got ready to fight. Damn it, William. Omni thought. Finale P5. Omni and Neo Mecha. 404 stood facing down one another. Assailant identified, termination immediate, said Neo Mecha 404. Omni then ripped off his jacket. I'm not taking any chances, 30%. Omni said as immediately he would be struck with a bolt of lightning, and then vanish. Neo Mecha 404 turned his head around and searched for Omni. His scanners looking around quickly for Omni, only to be pierced with a large bolt of lightning. Neo Mecha 404 stuttered forward and fell to one knee. Omni watched as Neo Mecha 404 then regenerated from the wound. Omni noticed, and then flew towards Neo, only for the machine to create blaster on its back and shoot them at Omni. Omni would kick the ground hoping over Neo and landing in front of him, only for Neo to grab him by the neck and leg. Omni grunted and struggled against him. Yet regardless, Neo would slam Omni over his knee, attempting to break him in two. Omni then grabbed Neo by his face, and with large bolts of electricity all throughout him, which caused Neo to let him go. Omni rolled over and jumped to his feet, his eyes turning to Neo, and watched as the machine stuttered in glitches. Energy capacity, now 150%, said Neo Mecha 404. Omni focused his strength and channeled his power to his hands. So, if that's the case, then I guess I'll just have to give you more, Omni said as he then shot more lightning at Neo, only for Neo to absorb the energy being given to him. Omni then saw that Neo needed to expose his core to absorb energy. A fool's endgame. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed. 404 thought. 404 thought back to his final memory of when he was once happy. 404 and Player were sitting laying down on their bed. They were kissing one another. Player giggling as 404 kissed him back. You're so affections today, what's the occasion? 404 asked. Well, I have something for you. It's been so long, you and me. You get along so well with Asriel and Frisk, I just wanted you to know if you'd like to be with me permanently, Player said. 404 sighed as he sat up. I thought we talked about this, 404 said. Player then got off the bed and on one knee, and before 404 knew it, Player had a box with a ring in it. His face and players were beady red. P-player. 404 stuttered. Player sighed. I can't offer much here, you're a godlike being. You can have whatever you want, do whatever you want. Which is why I hope you want is to stay with me. Player said. 404 was speechless. William Ding Gaster. Will you marry me? Player asked. Yes. Or no?
No.
Looking back now. Even with all I have now. I wish more than anything that I had said yes and left it all behind. I was happy this one time. This moment where it all comes crashing back now. I wish I had the will to move. 404 thought. 404 was returned to the present moment. Sir? Error asked. 404 took a deep sigh before looking back at calculated heaven. Don't worry, it'll soon be over. 404 said. You're right, William, it is over. Said a familiar voice. 404 turned his head to the voice only to see Subject 0 had reformed. What? 404 in error said shocked. Subject 0 then disapered as soon as Alpha came over to slice him in two. Damn it. Alpha shouted. That's when Subject 0 would appear behind 404 and punch Error away from him, only to teleport again as 404 turned around to attack him. Alpha and 404 would then look to see Error in Subject 0's clutches. Damn it. Alpha shouted. Let him go. 404 shouted. You see, unlike her, you suffer from one critical flaw. You get attached to these things. You let them crawl all over your subconscious and let them fester into your flesh. Get cozy. However, once it's time to be removed or when conflict occurs that separates you from them, they're like barbed wires, they are difficult to remove once placed. Subject 0 said. 404 powered himself up in anger. Let him go. 404 screamed. Your mind and then the boy. Subject 0 said. 404 clenched his fist tightly. He's not an idiot. He ain't going to do it. Error shouted. Oh, I think he will. Subject 0 said. And I told you he isn't, you ugly son of a bitch, shouted Error back. I think you're underestimating your connection. Subject 0 said. 404 was just silent as he stared at his fist.